Chapter 3093. Insane Prefecture returned to its peaceful state. The 9 paragons seemed to know that Insane Prefecture was not to be trifled with, so their descendants never crossed into the ancient immortal subworld. Even Xing Xian was much safer now. Heaven Suppression Prefecture, Sky Gazing Peak. The 9 cauldrons were arranged in a circle with Yi Qinghan sitting in the center. Reverend Yu's bones of virtue were hidden in his chest as he formed a mudra with his fingers. He relied on the bones to communicate with the 9 cauldrons. The sky was blue with white clouds covering the sky. Boom! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan controlled the cauldrons to soar into the sky. The cauldrons continuously sent back information from Reverend Yu's insights. These 9 cauldrons represented Reverend Yu's limit. All of his power was displayed here. The vast and majestic laws of virtuous paragons rushed towards Yi Qinghan from the cauldron. The meritorious bone emitted a divine light that enveloped every inch of Yi Qinghan's skin. These laws seemed to have been comprehended a long time ago, so he didn't need to spend any effort to comprehend them. Wisdom imbuement. Yi Qinghan's state of mind was rapidly changing. The bones of virtue contained the last essence of Reverend Yu, including his state of mind. As long as he refined the bones of virtue, the 9 cauldrons would automatically be refined and Yi Qinghan's state of mind would completely stabilize in the virtuous paragon realm. This was especially true in terms of power. He had the power and techniques of both Ho-I and Reverend Yu on top of his own secret laws. With the accumulation of merits in the world, Insane Prefecture was extremely devout. They could have their own merits, but so could Yi Qinghan. How many merits were there for an army of tens of millions? How much faith did Insane Prefecture have? Especially now when everyone was in danger. They were all praying for Insane Prefecture to come out and suppress the current situation so that peace could return. 3 portions of merits and 3 paragons gathered into one. The small white clouds coiled around Yi Qinghan's limbs and bones to aid his cultivation. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow replica emitted a blinding light as it automatically opened its bowstring. In an instant, the entire subworld could feel Yi Qinghan's aura growing stronger. In the distant mysterious star Dao field, the mysterious star sage looked in the direction of Kuang Manor. Over there, heaven and earth phenomena appeared. Dragons roared, tigers roared, and divine phoenixes danced, causing one's mind to ripple. The star profound sage took a deep breath and said to himself hoarsely, "Who would have thought? His strength has actually become so exaggerated. Just what kind of opportunity did he obtain?" Starhooter stood respectfully at the side and said in a low voice, "What should we do next?" The sage frowned. On one side was the newly risen Might Kuang Prefecture, while on the other were the 9 paragons from the primordial era. It wasn't a good choice since they only trusted their own people. Others would only be refined. As for Yi Qinghan, their chances of winning were too slim. Moreover, even if they joined Kuang Prefecture now, they would gain too little. This Yi Qinghan has dealings with the sage of the 3rd planet. In addition, their chances of winning are too low, so we should stay where we are and wait for an opportunity, the star profound sage said in a serious voice. Starhooter was silent for a while before he bowed slightly and asked again, "The person lying in the forbidden area of the back mountain, do your best to wake him up. He has been asleep for so many years, and his identity hasn't been found out yet. However, looking at his strength, he is definitely very powerful, far surpassing me. If we can wake him up, he will have to thank me. When the time comes, we can join forces and take a share of the benefits from Kuang Prefecture and the 9 paragons," the star profound sage said in a deep voice. The star profound sage and Starhooter came to the forbidden area of the back mountain one after the other. There was a different world here, and the scenery was picturesque. A waterfall fell from the sky, and the immortal chi was oppressive. This person's clothing was different from that of the secondary universe, but it was also different from the original universe. He didn't have anything special on him, only a waist token and a jade pendant. Therefore, it was difficult to find out who he was. The word sage was engraved on the waist token. There was only one word, but the law of patterns was clear and powerful. There was nothing special about the jade pendant. Although it was rare, it wasn't expensive. His soul and body have suffered a great impact. Half of it came from the law of divine force, and the other half from the primordial black hole. Even if he can be saved, there might be problems with his soul. The star-profound sage sighed softly. Starherder's eyes flashed. In his opinion, although the star-profound sage was a sage, he couldn't be on the same level as Quang Prefecture or the 9 paragons. It would be the same even if this person was revived. The star-profound sage wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. There were only 2 paths in front of Starherder. He could either side with Quang Prefecture or one of the 9 paragons. From today onwards, you will be in charge of everything in the training ground. I will save this Taoist friend. I hope he can be saved before the war begins. The star-profound sage said seriously. Starherder immediately bowed. Yes, after leaving the back mountain, Starherder clenched his fists and murmured to himself, a great man is ruthless. I also want to become a sage and not be someone's subordinate for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I don't know that person's identity, or I could have asked Quang Prefecture or the 9 paragons for some sovereign origin energy. Although I don't know his identity, there aren't many people stronger than him. Just because I don't know doesn't mean others don't know. Starherder's eyes wandered. He didn't know whether to choose Quang Prefecture or the 9 paragons. In the end, he looked towards the direction of Quang Prefecture. The pressure there was too strong, indicating that Yi Qinghan was rapidly advancing. I might not be able to survive if I go to the 9 paragons' territory, but Quang Prefecture is different. Although I betrayed the star-profound sacred ground, I still brought them information. It shouldn't be hard to ask for a sovereign origin energy. Starherder decisively rushed towards Quang Prefecture. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was breaking through to the virtuous paragon realm. His power was majestic and he could mobilize the power of the secondary worlds at any time. He could even sense the power of the original universe and the heaven domain. His power had surpassed the limit, more than twice that of an ordinary virtuous paragon. He could destroy a secondary universe with a wave of his hand. This was a power second only to the rulers. He could forcefully mobilize the power of the original universe. The 9 divine cauldrons hovered in the air and filled his psyche ocean with Yuzun's full cultivation. His power was still rising and he was about to step into the virtuous paragon realm. Time flew by and a year passed in the blink of an eye. Refining the 9 cauldrons was easier than he thought because Yuzun's bones of virtue had turned into one of his bones that protected his heart. Half a month later, Starherder appeared in Quang Prefecture's heaven-suppressing palace. The Flame Emperor had just sharpened the Fang into a dagger. It was half a meter long and could be used as a sword or a dagger. It contained poisonous bugs and corpse bugs. Now that the poisonous bugs and corpse bugs had evolved, they could devour the power and blood essence of sages and evolve continuously. Yen Sovereign and Jian Bugui had fed them with their own blood for a period of time. Once they went out of control, it would cause an unimaginable disaster. But they had no other choice. Yen Yunbei left Quang Prefecture with the dagger and Great Saint Thieving Heaven, heading straight for the Purple Sun Secondary World and Heaven Surveyor Secondary World. Their destination was where the 9 sages were hiding. Starherder walked past them and entered the heaven-suppressing palace. Chapter 3094. Xing Mu entered the heaven-suppressing palace's main emperor palace, but Yen Sovereign and Jian Bugui did not receive him. Instead, it was Emperor Yi and Jian Qinshue who received him. Jian Qinshue looked at Xing Mu who hadn't been here for a long time and asked curiously, "What orders does the star-profound saint have for sending you here?" Xing Mu smiled and said calmly, "This time, I'm here privately to make a deal with Manor Lord Yi. But I'm not sure if the information I have is useful." "What is it?" asked Emperor Yi. It's about a person's whereabouts. I don't know who he is, and neither does our Saint Lord. But his cultivation level is higher than our Saint Lord's. More importantly, this person's attire is different from the secondary universe and the original universe, said Xing Mu calmly. Emperor Yi and Jian Qinxue did not know what this person could do or what he could do to the Kuang manor. The two exchanged glances and did not know what to do. At the same time, Situ Shui Tang returned to the main emperor palace after taking a stroll around the heaven-suppressing palace. What does he look like? Asked Situ Shui Tang quickly. Hua. Xing Mu waved his hand and projected the person's face. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but because of his long slumber, time did not leave any traces on his face. But this face looked familiar, or rather, similar to someone. Situ Shui Tang frowned as she felt this person was familiar, but she did not know who he was. Wait, just as Xing Mu was about to remove the projection, Situ Shui Tang noticed the token and the word saint on it caught her attention. Is he the first Saint Lord? Situ Shui Tang had never seen the first Saint Lord before. After all, the age gap between them was too big. When the first Saint Lord left, her father was not even born yet, let alone her. Where is he? Asked Situ Shui Tang nervously. Xing Mu smiled, rubbed his fingertips together and said calmly, "This is why I came to the heaven-suppressing palace. This person's whereabouts, I want to trade for something." Jian Qinxue and Emperor Yi looked at each other, then looked at Situ Shui Tang and asked via voice transmission, "Miss Shui Tang, who is this person?" Situ Shui Tang wasn't sure, so she shook her head. "I don't know either, but I suspect it's the first sacred master of Yishan Shan. He has the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. There's been no news of him since he left Yishan Shan." Jian Qinxue and Emperor Yi did not know who this person was, but it could be a very important person. Neither Jian Qinxue nor Emperor Yi dared to be careless. "I wonder what Daoist Xing Mu wants to exchange for?" Jian Qinxue asked directly. The Star Herder replied firmly, "A lump of sovereign's origin energy and the protection of the insane manor for 3,000 years. Hiss hiss hiss, Jian Qinxue and Emperor Yi gasped. This Star Herder's taste was really not small. "It's just a person's whereabouts, why do you want a lump of sovereign's origin energy?" Jian Qinxue looked at Xing Mu in shock and asked suspiciously. Xing Mu shook his head and said softly, "I don't know, but my intuition tells me that my sacred master values this person very much. Now that the insane manor is about to fight against the 9 Supreme's virtuous paragons, I believe this person is worth recruiting." Huff, Emperor Yi and Jian Qinxue both sighed softly and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, they did not dare to express their opinions carelessly. After all, this involved the sovereign source energy and the whereabouts of the sun-shooting celestial destroying bow, even though the chances were slim. If that person wasn't the first sacred master and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow wasn't in his hands, then the sovereign's origin energy would be wasted. But if that person was really the first sacred master of Yishan Shan and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow was really in his hands, then the sovereign's origin energy would be worth it. Purely gambling. Wait a moment, my husband is in seclusion. Wait for him to come out before making a decision. Emperor Yi said in a serious tone. Xing Mu shook his head and said indifferently, "If your manor doesn't want to trade, then I'll have to find someone else. I'm afraid Insane Manor isn't the only one interested in this person. Aren't you afraid that I'll take you down and hand you over to the Star Profound Sage?" Jian Qinxue asked coldly. Xing Mu smiled evilly and replied confidently, "If I wasn't prepared, how would I dare to take the risk alone? I can't leave Insane Manor today. This news will be delivered to the 9 Supreme's virtuous paragons within 3 days. However, I also believe in Insane Manor's character. Even if they don't trade, they will let me go and keep this secret." Xing Mu said indifferently. Situ Shuatang really wanted to trade, but she didn't have the sovereign's origin energy, so she could only look at Emperor Yi and Jian Qinxue. Inform everyone in insane manner to come to the main imperial hall to discuss this matter. Jian Qinshue said to the guards outside the hall. Yes. One of the guards immediately retreated. A moment later, all the experts guarding the main imperial hall moved out and entered the hall. Even Lu Feng and Chu Shi Junxian came. When Yan Emperor found out that Xing Mu wanted to trade a piece of information for the sovereign's origin energy, his eyes flashed fiercely, and he almost killed Xing Mu on the spot. Lu Feng's cold eyes stared at Xing Mu. His murderous aura filled the air, making people shudder. You're the only person who has dared to threaten insane manner in recent years, Lu Feng said coldly. Xing Mu smiled and replied, how can this be a threat? I'm here to trade. I'm not planning to force a trade, am I? Xing Mu was almost certain that insane manner cared about this person. Otherwise, they would have asked him to leave long ago. This test gave him more than a 50% chance of obtaining the sovereign's origin energy. At this moment, a person appeared in the main imperial hall. It was Yi Qinghan, who had been in seclusion for more than a year. Then I'll trade with you, Yi Qinghan said without even asking. Everyone was shocked. Yi Qinghan agreed without even knowing the information. He didn't put the sovereign's origin energy in his eyes at all. Speak. Give me your information and I'll give you the sovereign's origin energy. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out a ball of sovereign's origin energy. He casually threw it to Xing Mu. The light in his eyes made Xing Mu not dare to look directly at it. Xing Mu was also shocked by Yi Qinghan's straightforwardness. At this moment, he even suspected that Yi Qinghan was trying to trick him. That person is in the forbidden area behind the Star Mystic Holy Land. He has been sleeping there for countless years and has shown no signs of waking up. The Star Mystic Sage said that he is very powerful and has almost reached the virtuous Paragon realm, Xing Mu said with a trembling voice. Yi Qinghan rubbed his chin and said calmly, Xing Mu, I hope you're telling the truth. Come with me to the Star Mystic Holy Land to verify it. Asterisk plop, asterisk Xing Mu was so scared that he knelt on the ground and said in fear, Mansion Lord, I can't go to the Holy Land. He will kill me. It's not up to you. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. He directly grabbed Xing Mu and teleported to the Star Mystic Holy Land. The Saint Mountain was peaceful. However, it didn't rely on the power of the Saint Mountain. It relied on the crazy mansion to guard the ancient immortal subrealm. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk Yi Qinghan brought Xing Mu to the Saint Mountain. His divine sense flashed and he couldn't find the Star Mystic Sage's location. Asterisk whoosh, asterisk Yi Qinghan brought Xing Mu to the forbidden area behind the mountain without alerting anyone. Even the Star Mystic Sage didn't sense that Yi Qinghan had arrived. Senior Star Mystic, long time no see, Yi Qinghan said faintly. The Star Mystic Sage was startled and quickly turned around. When he saw Yi Qinghan appear behind him, he couldn't help but have goosebumps. Yi Qinghan glanced at the 50 to 60-year-old man lying on the stone slab. Although he couldn't be sure of this person's identity, he was certain that this person's cultivation was very powerful. Chapter 3095. In the forbidden area of the Star Profound Holy Land, Xing Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. He had never expected him to appear here. Xing Mu was terrified. He knelt on the ground, not daring to say a word. Manor Lord Yi, what are you doing? The Star Profound Sage looked at Xing Mu and asked in confusion. Yi Qinghan said bluntly, who is this person lying on the ground? Where did you bring him? Xing Xian frowned at Yi Qinghan and said in a deep voice, Manor Lord Yi, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. This is my forbidden area. You broke in without my permission. Isn't that against the rules? Phew, Yi Qinghan gently exhaled and said indifferently, let's put it this way. This person might be related to the life and death of the entire universe. If Senior wants to continue enjoying peace, you might as well tell me about his origin. No way. He's just a sage who has been in a coma for countless years. You don't even know who he is, yet you say that he's related to the life and death of the universe. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Xing Xian asked with some dissatisfaction. Yi Qinghan glanced at Xing Mu. He looked down on this kind of person, so he didn't plan on letting him live. He asked me to use a portion of the sovereign's origin energy to buy the location of this unconscious person, so I'm sure you don't know him. The number of sages in the entire universe is fixed. Even if there are 1 or 2 who hide their identity, it doesn't mean they don't have a name. We don't know this person, so it means that he came from another place, a place that rarely appears in the world. As far as I know, only the world of virtuous sages can give birth to such a sage, so I suspect he's the son of virtuous sage Ho-I. Yi Qinghan calmly explained. Hiss, Xing Mu sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to sell him out. The star profound sage was furious. He didn't expect his descendant to sell him out for a lump of sovereign's origin energy. He even threatened that if I didn't take him in, he would sell this information to the 9 paragons. He didn't even think about how your sage mountain would survive if my insane faction were to be defeated. Yi Qinghan gloomily said, don't you know why only the ancient immortal subworld is peaceful after the 9 paragons' revival while the other subworlds are in danger? It's my crazy manner that's overseeing this place. Unfortunately, you've all forgotten about it. Yi Qinghan glanced at Xing Mu and calmly reminded him, also, I owe you a favor. I'm giving him to you to repay the favor. Boom! The star profound sage pressed down with his palm, which contained endless power of the sage and directly shattered the soul of the star herder, killing him. Phew! The star profound sage exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and instantly aged a lot. He never thought that he would be betrayed by the person closest to him. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out the sovereign's origin energy. He handed it to the star profound sage and said indifferently, I'm taking this person with me. Also, if Senior can tell me where you brought him from, this faction will be very grateful. The star profound sage was unwilling. He looked at the sovereign's origin energy in Yi Qinghan's hand. If he took it, he would have to give up on this person. If he didn't take it, Yi Qinghan was no longer the same as before. No one could refuse him what he wanted. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice, Senior, in the battle of the paragons, no one will take the lead. Everyone will die. I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy more than a few days of peace. Don't be short-sighted. The star profound sage bitterly smiled and sighed. Back then, it was an unintentional act. You and I can be considered to have had some opportunities. Since you said so, I also don't want to destroy our friendship. You can take this person with you. I found him when I was traveling through the Chiu Heaven domain. I found him in the west of the 9-star domain. There is a pattern on his back. It's a bow. It's the sun shooting immortal destroying bow. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed and he immediately became excited. This sentence basically confirmed the identity of this person. He was definitely the first-generation sacred master of Yishan Shan, the son of Hoi virtuous sage. Yi Qinghan bowed and cupped his fists, thank you, Senior. The star profound sage took the sovereign's origin energy and looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly. He whispered, Faction Lord Yi, tell me the truth. How confident are you in winning against those 9 paragons? Even if it's a draw, at least you can protect the ancient immortal subworld and turn it into a clean land. Yi Qinghan pondered for a while and replied in a serious voice, I don't dare to say how confident I am in winning, but I am 70 to 80% confident in protecting the ancient immortal subworld. Senior, I don't want you to pick the wrong side at the last moment. As long as we eliminate those 9 paragons, I can join hands with Senior Yan Emperor to clear the reincarnation cycle and even revive some people. The star profound sage's eyes flashed as he sighed and said, since it's a critical moment, Take back this sovereign's origin energy and give it to someone who can use it. I hope you can win. I'm willing to contribute to the final battle. Yi Qinghan smiled and didn't refuse. He took the sovereign's origin energy and whispered, "Thank you, Senior. Take him away." The star-profound sage waved his hand. Yi Qinghan carried the sleeping old man on his back and brought him out of the Saint Mountain. With Yi Qinghan's current speed, crossing the subworld was just a matter of moments. Half an hour later, Yi Qinghan appeared in the heaven-suppressing palace with the sleeping old man. He used the virtuous paragons Yin and Yang ring to enter the Yishan realm and brought out the medicine god and Saint Master. Saint Master and medicine god immediately recognized that the sleeping old man was the first Saint Master. "Why is he in a deep sleep?" Saint Master asked in shock. Medicine god quickly squatted down and his soul entered the old man's psyche ocean. He found out that the old man's soul was damaged twice. The first was caused by someone. It was left behind from the first war of destruction in the Yishan realm. Before he could recover, he left the Yishan realm. But just as he left the Yishan realm and entered the original universe, he was attacked by the primordial black hole and was heavily injured again. Hua! Medicine god quickly took out 2 golden divine pellets and placed the first one into the old man's mouth. "Master, please help him refine the divine pellet. It's easy to wake him up, but I'm afraid he won't be able to fight even if he wakes up," Medicine god said solemnly. Yi Qinghan nodded silently. He didn't need Ho Yi's son to fight, but the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao must be found. Hua! Saint Light shrouded Yi Qinghan and the sleeping old man. Billowing virtuous paragon power surged into the old man's psyche ocean and healed him bit by bit. Under the soul divine pellet's comfort, his damaged soul was slowly recovering. Time passed and the tension was suffocating. Only this old man knew where the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao was. Even if the Bao was fused with him, he must be awakened before he could be retrieved. Otherwise, the only way was to refine his body. 3 months later, the sleeping old man finally showed some reaction. His brows twitched and his fingertips trembled slightly. He was about to wake up. Everyone in the Kuang manor looked at the old man with anticipation. Yen Sovereign was unprecedentedly nervous. Obtaining the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing Bao meant that the 9-colored Brahma heart was about to be revived. Chapter 3096. The righteous royal hall was filled with experts. 90% of the experts outside of the 9 paragons and the world of paragons were present. Even 3 paragons working together couldn't deal with Kuang Manor. At this moment, everyone was staring at the old man. Humph, the old man had a splitting headache. He couldn't endure this pain even in his sleep. His soul had been tormenting him for so many years. Out of self-preservation, he slept for so many years. Now, he was forcefully awakened. Luckily, Yi Qinghan had healed half of his injuries. Yi Qinghan didn't stop healing him and continued channeling his paragon power. The alchemy god elder placed a second divine pill into the old man's mouth. It also melted in his mouth. Soul-type divine pills were all of the best quality. They were made specifically for soul injuries and were priceless. As long as one's soul wasn't destroyed, they could be saved. When the second pill entered the old man's body, his soul felt as if it was being bathed in warm water. It was exceptionally comfortable. Under the protection of the divine pill and Yi Qinghan's paragon power, the old man finally woke up. His eyes were cloudy and full of fatigue. His silver-white hair made him look even older. The old man had never seen Yi Qinghan before. He didn't even know the divine lord and alchemy god. After all, they were only a few years old when he left. The old man felt someone protecting his soul. He narrowed his eyes at the group kneeling before him and asked with a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" Whoosh! The current divine lord kneeled before the old man and respectfully replied, "Grandfather, I am Xianlong. My father is your sixth son, Jingxian. Oh. The old man finally showed some emotion. There was no way he didn't know Jingxian. That was the second divine lord he personally appointed. Where is Jingxian? The old man softly asked. The current sacred lord immediately replied, Grandpa, about 10 epochs after you left, the Yishan world once again had outsiders descend upon it. Father died in battle for the Yishan world, and now, I am the sacred lord of the Yishan world. Sigh, the old man sighed. He didn't expect his favorite son to die even earlier than him. I slept for an unknown amount of time, and when I woke up, the world had already changed. The old man sighed. He wanted to struggle to his feet, but he couldn't. Yi Qinghan got up and helped him up. He bowed slightly and said, Greetings, senior brother, Ho Yi's personal disciple, Yi Qinghan. The old man was stunned. His father's direct disciples had all died in battle, and there was not a single one left. Why had another one suddenly appeared? Grandpa, Lord Yi entered God Yi's world recently and awakened Father God. Father God turned the last wisp of his soul into essence and gave it to Lord Yi. Sacred leader Xianlong hurriedly explained. Only then did the old man understand what was going on. He immediately smiled and said, So it's junior apprentice brother. It seems that you've saved this old man. Yi Qinghan immediately bowed and replied, This is also a coincidence. What's the situation now? Although the old man was past his prime, he still cared about the big picture. Yi Qinghan immediately explained, Back then, virtuous paragons were suppressed by virtuous paragon Yuzun and virtuous paragon Ho Yi. Now that they have awakened, junior apprentice brother urgently needs the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow to suppress these people again. I hope that senior apprentice brother can bestow the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow to junior apprentice brother. The old man frowned. He didn't expect the situation to be this bad. He wanted to summon the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, but he didn't have the ability to do so. Cooperate with this old man and take out the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. I don't need it anymore, so I'll leave it to you. The old man said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan held the old man's hand. His soul entered the old man's sea of consciousness and cooperated with the old man's soul to forcefully mobilize the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. Whoosh! The real sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow appeared. In an instant, the world changed. Dark clouds covered the sky, but they couldn't cover the light of the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. The quiver also appeared. There were only 7 arrows left inside since 2 of them were missing. Yi Qinghan took the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow and forcefully severed the connection between the old man and the bow. This was because the old man couldn't break the contract between him and the bow. With the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow in hand, Yi Qinghan gave the replica to the current Sacred Lord Xianlong, while he refined the real sun-shooting immortal destroying bow. Sacred Lord Xianlong, I'm afraid you'll have to participate in this battle as well. Yi Qinghan said gravely. Sacred Lord Xianlong solemnly nodded. After refining the immortal bow, Yi Qinghan glanced around and said, Prepare for battle. For this battle, Senior Yan Emperor, Bugui, and Sacred Lord Xianlong will take the initiative to attack. All cultivators above the Ancestor Realm will gather at the Seeking Heaven Realm. We'll set the battlefield there so as to not harm the common people. Without waiting for the 9 virtuous paragons to take action, the name of battle was meaningless. Surviving was the best option. Yan Emperor took a deep breath. His battle intent looked down on all existences as the mortal emperor sword trembled. This was his thirst for the final battle. There's no time to lose, I'll announce the plan. Senior Yan Emperor and I will assassinate 2 virtuous paragons on our own. We'll end the battle quickly and not give the enemy a chance to send reinforcements. Sacred Lord Xianlong and Bugui will work together to kill 1, eliminating 3 out of 9. The remaining 6 won't be too difficult to deal with. At most, both sides will suffer heavy losses. Yi Qinghan looked at the solemn crowd and felt his blood boiling. He alone had the inheritances of 2 virtuous paragons. He could instantly kill a virtuous paragon and even a virtuous paragon. Yi Qinghan had the ability to kill people that the 3 kings and 5 emperors couldn't kill back then. 1 plus 1 wasn't as simple as 2. He had fused with the inheritances of 2 virtuous paragons, but it definitely wasn't the power of 2 virtuous paragons. Moreover, he himself had entered the virtuous paragon realm. Good, I've been waiting for this for a long time. Yan Emperor exhaled and raised his voice while holding his sword. Jian Bugui smiled. Her state of mind was no longer fluctuating. She had promised to help Yi Qinghan in the final battle. Now that this battle had come, it was time to end it. She hoped that after winning this battle, Zhang Fan would be able to return alive. Whether it was reincarnation or resurrection, there would be no regrets in her heart. Wu Tian, go to the 3rd planet and inform the Elder Lord that we will fight the final battle first. If there are any ancestors from the 3 kings and 5 emperors who are willing to fight, please do your best. Yi Qinghan looked at Yi Tong and said in a serious tone. Yes, master. Lin Wutian bowed and said. Whoosh. Lin Wutian didn't hesitate and directly left. Yi Qinghan looked at Yan Emperor, Jian Bugui, and Sacred Lord Xianlong. After exchanging glances, they all nodded and resolutely stepped towards the Qiutian realm. The 4 of them were the vanguard and quickly moved forward. They didn't want to give the virtuous paragons time to recover. Sacred Lord Xianlong was not a virtuous paragon, but he had a replica of the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow. He could definitely buy some time for Jian Bugui. Jian Bugui, Yan Emperor, and Yi Qinghan were all young men at the peak of their power. The virtuous paragons were past their prime. Those who couldn't be killed back then could now be killed and completely destroyed, causing them to be on the verge of death. Chapter 3097. 4 experts appeared at the heaven-seeking realm. Their initial targets were the 4 virtuous paragons in the Heaven Survey subrealm. There were 5 in the Violet Sun subrealm, but they were hiding in different areas. It was very difficult to pinpoint their final location. However, there were 2 existences at the peak of the 9th level in the Crazy Mansion. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint and Yan Yunbei. The 2 of them split up to search for the 4 paragons. Their silhouettes flickered silently. Even the sages couldn't find them. The Heaven Survey subrealm was a sacred ground for sages. There were many experts here, but all of them were strangers. It was certain that there was a virtuous paragon hiding here, and these strangers must have come from the virtuous paragon world. Yan Yunbei held his dagger and quietly sneaked in. He found that there were experts guarding all 4 sides of this mountain range with numerous formations. It would be very difficult for anyone to sneak in without being noticed. This meant that there were virtuous paragons recovering from their injuries inside. Yan Yunbei didn't want to alert the enemy and quietly retreated. Many members of the Assassin Legion were disguised as ordinary people and roamed around the Heaven Survey subrealm. Moreover, they were quite popular with the people. Under the protection of the common people, they were like fish in water and weren't hunted down by the virtuous paragons. At this time, Yan Yunbei mobilized a portion of the Legion to quickly spread the news. At this moment, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint was indeed a veteran. Not only did he find the location of a virtuous paragon, he also entered a treasury and emptied it. He also conveniently stole the supreme weapon of a virtuous paragon before escaping unscathed. Very quickly, the locations of 3 paragons were confirmed, but the last one was nowhere to be found. Yi Qinghan, Yan King, Jian Bugui, and Xianlong's Sacred Lord didn't immediately take action. Without finding the 4th paragon, the other party could appear at any time and could cause the mission to fail. Yan Yunbei, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint, and Yi Qinghan's group met up in a valley inside the Heaven Survey subrealm. Let's find the locations of all the paragons in the Heaven Survey subrealm before taking action. Yi Qinghan was very cautious. He had to win the first match without any mishaps. He could not afford to let his guard down. Yan Yunbei frowned and said in a serious tone, "The territories of Heaven-Blessed Sage, Xiaoyu Sage, and Fangyue Sage all have a virtuous paragon, but outside of them, only Turtle Sage's territory hasn't been visited. However, this person has never submitted to the 9 paragons. His defense is exceptionally strong and he has even fought against the disciples of virtuous paragons several times. Both sides suffered losses, so there shouldn't be any virtuous paragons hiding in his territory, right? The most unlikely place is the most likely place. There is an 80% chance that the 4th virtuous paragon is in the Turtle Ancestor's territory. Moreover, it is very likely that he has reached an agreement with the Turtle Ancestor. It is just a cover." The Flame Emperor calmly said. Yi Qinghan nodded and said, "All is fair in war. I agree with Senior Yen Emperor's speculation." Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint shrugged and said faintly, "I'll go take a look. If it's true, this daddy will take the Turtle Ancestor's turtle shell." Whoosh! Whoosh! Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's figure flickered. There wasn't even a spatial fluctuation as he directly left the place. 2 hours later, he appeared inside the Turtle Ancestor's sacred ground. The defense here was quite tight, but there wasn't a second unfamiliar sage. This meant that there were no descendants of virtuous paragons here. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint quietly entered the depths of the sacred ground and continued to wander around the forbidden grounds. He found many treasures and casually took them all away. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find any traces of virtuous paragons. He thought that Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor's speculation was wrong and was about to leave. However, when he was about to return, he found something amiss outside of a tall building. A large group of experts were hiding around the building. There were 2 sage auras that were faintly discernible. If it wasn't for Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's understanding of the ultimate profundity of space to an impeccable level, he wouldn't have been able to find out that there was something hidden here. Interesting, it really is here. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's eyes flashed as he stared at the center of the building. He was bold and daring as he took advantage of the night to sneak into the building. A skeleton-like old man emitted light as he sat on the top floor. The entire building was covered by a spirit-gathering formation with dense spirit energy. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint approached the virtuous paragon's room but didn't dare to enter. A virtuous paragon was still a virtuous paragon while a sage was only an ant before him. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked and used the spatial escape to leave the building. "Turtle Ancestor, you are the one who provoked me. Your turtle shell is mine for sure." Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint found the Turtle Ancestor who was in seclusion. The turtle shell was his innate divine armor that he always wore on his body. Moreover, it was connected by blood and contract. Whoosh! Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint didn't hide his identity and location and directly appeared in front of the Turtle Ancestor. The Turtle Ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His old and ugly face resembled an incomplete turtle as he stared at Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint with his deep eyes. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint was so famous and wanted by so many sages, there was no way the Turtle Ancestor wouldn't recognize this old man. "It's you. You are truly daring." The Turtle Ancestor gloomily scolded, "You actually dared to come to my place of seclusion, do you really think you are a sage?" Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked, "Turtle Ancestor, you are asking a tiger for its skin. If I inform Yi Qinghan, I wonder if your turtle shell can stop the destruction of the sun-shot immortal vanquishing bow." The Turtle Ancestor's aura paused for a moment before he replied with disdain, "The sun-shot immortal vanquishing bow has disappeared for countless years. Yi Qinghan doesn't have it, what can he do to me?" Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint sneered, "What an old fool. He doesn't have the sun-shot immortal vanquishing bow, but he does have a replica. That is also a divine weapon from a virtuous paragon. It shouldn't be a problem for it to penetrate your defense. The turtle ancestor's aura froze as he nervously took a step back. He cautiously stared at Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint and asked in a muffled voice, "You are also from the secondary universe?" Yi Qinghan has dealings with the third planet and is opposing a virtuous paragon from the secondary universe. This is tantamount to betraying your ancestors. Do you want to work with the insane sect to deal with a virtuous paragon from my secondary universe? He. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint took a step forward while the turtle ancestor took a step back. However, Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint relied on his speed and space profundity, so his right hand was still on the turtle ancestor's shoulder. Don't be nervous, everything can be discussed. Lend me your turtle shell and I won't tell on you. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smirked. The turtle ancestor was furious. His turtle shell was a life-saving treasure that he had accumulated over countless years. It could even withstand a blow from a virtuous paragon. How could he lend it to someone else? Moreover, this was Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint who refused to return it. You are courting death. If you leave now, I can spare your life. Otherwise, if you disturb the awakening of a virtuous paragon, you won't survive even if you have 9 lives. The turtle ancestor threatened. Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint smiled with disdain and patted the turtle ancestor's shoulder before lightly saying, "We'll see who will die in 3 months." Whoosh! Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's figure flashed and left the turtle ancestor's place of seclusion. The turtle ancestor didn't expect Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint to leave in such a painful manner. He was still rejoicing when he suddenly remembered Thieving Heaven Extreme Saint's personality and knew that he wouldn't leave empty-handed. He immediately remembered the second turtle shell in his spatial ring. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows, let alone the turtle ancestor. He had more than one turtle shell and another was hidden in his spatial ring. However, when he checked his spatial ring, the other turtle shell was gone. Ah! The turtle ancestor roared and angrily rushed out. However, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven had already escaped with his turtle shell, his whereabouts were unknown. Chapter 3098. In the valley between the Heaven Survey subworld and the 3 sacred grounds, an old man with a turtle shell on his back was humming and jumping into the depths with a smug expression. This was Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven. With this turtle shell, I'm confident in escaping even if it's a virtuous paragon. His mouth was about to split into a line while his eyes were filled with a challenging aura. This old geezer was old but not old at heart. A moment later, Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven appeared before Yi Qinghan's group with his turtle shell with a smug smile. I got one of the 2 shells. Also, I'll tell you some good news, that virtuous paragon is indeed hiding in the turtle ancestral sacred ground. Yi Qinghan's group heaved a sigh of relief. Today was the day of the decisive battle. Whoosh! Everyone opened the map and looked at it. There were a total of 4 sacred grounds, the territories of the 4 virtuous paragons in the past. The 9 virtuous paragons were quite bold to occupy all of the sacred grounds as their base. The Fangyue sacred ground was in the southeast, the deepest part of the Heaven Survey subworld. The Carefree sacred ground was in the southwest with the Fangyue sacred ground in the east and west, forming a triangle with the Heaven-blessed sacred ground. The Turtle ancestral sacred ground was behind the Heaven-blessed sacred ground. I'll be in charge of the Heaven-blessed sacred ground's virtuous paragon. Bugui and Xianlong sacred lord will be in charge of the one in the southwest. Senior Flame Emperor will be in charge of the one in the southeast. Old Smoke and Senior Thieving Heaven will take away a portion of the creatures around the 3 sacred grounds, take as many as you can. We must leave the Heaven Survey subworld and enter the Heaven-seeking realm before midnight to avoid being affected by the shockwaves. As for the other creatures, we have no choice but to give up. Yi Qinghan said in a serious tone. Who knew how many creatures there were in this vast subworld? Taking away half of them would be quite good. Yi Qinghan pointed at the map and said, "Tonight, the four of us will attack together at the fastest speed and no matter the cost. Even if the Turtle Ancestral Sacred Ground's virtuous paragon can react, the first to face him will be me. With my strength, I can kill the heaven-blessed paragon and stop the Turtle Ancestral Sacred Ground's virtuous paragon." Whoosh! Yan Yunbei and Extreme Saint Thieving didn't waste any words. They first wandered around the small regions and took away the living beings in the periphery. They were now in the Sage World and were incomparably huge. It wasn't a problem for the two of them to take away more than half of the living beings in the subworld. Everything happened quietly. Even the 9 Paragon spies were taken away, so there was no way for the news to reach the ears of the Paragon's descendants. Yan Emperor entered the southeast region while Jian Bugui and Sacred Lord Xianlong entered the southwest region. Their weapons had yet to awaken. Yi Qinghan was alone in the heaven-blessed sacred ground, silently waiting for Hai to arrive. The 9 divine cauldrons and the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow were both in his hands. He alone inherited the cultivation of 2 virtuous paragons. Moreover, his reverse 5 elements Grand Tao had taken shape, allowing him to become a virtuous paragon. He alone had the power of 3 virtuous paragons, so under the circumstances of a sneak attack, killing a wounded virtuous paragon was still possible. The virtuous paragon inside the heaven-blessed sacred ground didn't expect for the crazy mansion to initiate an apocalyptic battle at this time. Not only was it dangerous, but it also had to bear countless curses. This virtuous paragon was as thin as a skeleton. His blood energy had only recovered by 50%. There was still a bit of saint energy flowing through his body. His chest was pierced by the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow, suppressing his peak power. Without the Lord's origin energy to heal their wounded bodies, they could only rely on time. However, they needed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. Yi Qinghan wouldn't give them that time. Yi Qinghan stood on top of a mountain with the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow in his hand. The 9 cauldrons revolved around him as he quietly waited for time to pass. Yan Emperor was in position, so were Jian Bugui and Sacred Lord Xianlong. Hiss, in the southeast region, Crimson Flame was still in its first state. Because it shared the same realm as Yan Emperor, its power was monstrous. The two of them working together was equivalent to 2 virtuous paragons working together. Crimson Flame let out a long cry with an imposing appearance. The Mortal King's sword was ready to attack. "I have waited for too long." Yan Emperor took a deep breath and said with a hoarse voice, "Nine-colored, if I can't reincarnate or revive you, then I will accompany you." This was the final battle. Yi Qinghan had given him hope, and he was also fighting for this last hope. Yan Emperor's aura was transcendent as he caressed the scabbard of the Mortal King's sword with both hands. The scabbard was filled with killing runes. Yan Emperor had evolved the sword move countless times. The first and last move was enough to destroy a sacred ground. Mortal King Heaven Sealing. The Flame Emperor closed his eyes, and the sword technique flashed in his sea of consciousness. It was enough to split the Holy Land into 2, and the aftermath could destroy a secondary universe. After tomorrow, the Fengyue Holy Land would disappear completely, leaving no trace behind. In the Xiaoyu sacred ground, Jian Bugui held the sword of no return in his hand. The aura of no return from the past had returned once more. However, her current strength was enough to cause the power of a large secondary world to move with her sword. Profound Dragon Sacred Lord, immediately draw your bow and fire all 9 arrows to force that virtuous paragon out. The moment he appears, I will erupt with all of my power. Success or failure will depend on that one sword move. If we can't kill or wound him, then there will be no more chances. Jian Bugui said in a serious tone. Once the sword was unleashed, there would be no return until death. Profound Dragon nodded solemnly. He had also cultivated the 10-arrow art to its peak, but it was only at the peak of the sage realm, far from being a virtuous paragon. He was only responsible for forcing that virtuous paragon out. Yan Yunbei and thieving Heaven's sacred lord roamed the secondary universes outside of the 3 sacred grounds. All the living beings in the nearby secondary universes were taken away by them. Time quickly passed. Dusk had passed and darkness descended. Even the moonlight was gone. A moonless and windy night for murder. A murderous aura permeated the air as if hinting at the impending massacre. Near the heaven-blessed sacred ground, Yi Qinghan stood outside with 7 sun-shooting arrows on his back and 9 cauldrons under his feet. It was as if Ho-Yi had reappeared in this world. No, it could be said that he was an existence even stronger than Ho-Yi. Su Shi was about to end, and Hai Shi was about to arrive. Yi Qinghan took out 2 sun-shooting arrows from his back. One was placed on the bow while the other was in his mouth. The first arrow was to force the virtuous paragon out while the second arrow was the real weapon to kill him. The 9 cauldrons would wait until the moment the first arrow was shot to envelop the sacred ground. At that time, no one would be able to escape. Hiss, Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. The small white cloud turned into a white cloud glove. The divine bird had already fused with Yi Qinghan and was ready for battle. Dark clouds covered the top of his head, making it impossible to see his fingers in front of him. Yi Qinghan soared into the sky and silently calculated the time. Only half an incense stick's worth of time was left until night. The 9 cauldrons could suppress at any time while the first sun-shooting arrow could also annihilate the sacred ground. Whoosh, 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 his breathing was very rhythmic. Slowly, Yi Qinghan began to draw the bow. The power absorbed by the bow caused the nearby space to collapse, but it didn't alarm the people on the sacred mountain. 10-arrow art. 9 arrows combined into 10. This was the true arrow of destruction. It was enough to cause the collapse of the heavens. Yi Qinghan didn't have 9 arrows, only 7. However, he had 9 cauldrons protecting him. Buzz. The tip of the arrow was aimed at the sacred ground. It trembled rapidly and accurately aimed at the foot of the sacred mountain. This arrow could pierce through the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers and could also destroy a secondary universe. Night had arrived. Yi Qinghan glared. The first arrow roared out and annihilated space as it headed straight for the sacred mountain. The battle of destruction began with the first arrow. Boom! Whoosh! The sun-shooting arrow tore through the darkness with a monstrous flame. Chapter 3099. Boom! The first arrow had the power to destroy the world. It tore through the dark secondary universe and erupted with a power that illuminated more than half of the secondary realm. In the blink of an eye, the first sunshot arrow appeared at the foot of the sacred mountain. It flattened an area of millions of miles. The entire sacred mountain was annihilated. The flames reached the sky and evaporated the escaping paragons. Whoosh! The 9 cauldrons below Yi Qinghan's feet spun the stars and suppressed the earth. They wrapped around the sacred mountain and prevented the shock waves from spreading outwards. They were afraid that this arrow would affect the other secondary universes and the common people outside of the sacred mountain. Yi Qinghan didn't want to destroy the world. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's blood boiled. This was his first time using the power of a virtuous paragon since he had comprehended it. Yi Qinghan stared at the sacred mountain. He took out the second sunshot arrow from his mouth and drew the bow once more. He aimed at the sacred mountain and waited for the paragons to come out. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Roar! An angry roar shattered the mountains and rivers. An old man with white hair rushed out from the flames of the sacred mountain. He was a virtuous paragon with a soul-stealing sword in his hand. The sword was already unsheathed and carried a world-destroying power. It swept through the four directions, but it still collided with the divine formation laid down by the cauldrons. A blinding light shone everywhere. Whoosh! The second sun-shot arrow roared out the moment he appeared. It was so fast that even the paragon couldn't react in time. The moment the second sun-shooting arrow missed its target, Yi Qinghan grabbed the quiver on his back with his right hand. The remaining 5 arrows were all in his hand, and he knocked all of them onto his bow. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow bloomed with the most beautiful divine light, even more soul-stealing than the scorching sun. Ho-e! You're not dead yet, the paragon was horrified. He slashed his sword at the incoming arrow. The entire void was twisting and collapsing. The friction between the arrow tip and the distortion was particularly clear. Yi Qinghan of the Insane Mansion shall send you to the reincarnation cycle. Whoosh! The stable space was cut apart by the bowstring. The veins on Yi Qinghan's arms bulged. The small white cloud coiled around his arms and supported him by 30%. The power of the 3 paragons combined to unleash the final attack. Boom! 5 arrows shot out at the same time. The entire heaven-warping sacred ground collapsed. Even the secondary realms were pierced through. A huge abyss appeared at the center of the Heaven Sentinel secondary world. The 5 sunshot arrows drew a perfect arc and merged into one right in front of the paragon. This was the 10-arrow technique. Although it didn't combine 9 arrows into one, it possessed the peak power of the 10-arrow technique, or even stronger. Whoosh! Boom! The second sun-shooting arrow clashed with the paragon's immortal sword. The 2 sides were in a stalemate, but the 5 arrows combined into one pierced through the sword and pierced through the paragon's chest. The 60% of the paragon's recovered blood energy exploded and was ignited by the blue flame demonic flame that had reached the paragon level. Ah! Impossible, the virtuous paragon was frightened. He had an indestructible life force. Even the combined efforts of Ho-e and Yuzun couldn't kill him, but now, he could clearly feel death approaching. At this moment, his face twisted in horror as he felt his body collapsing and his life force dissipating. Nothing is impossible. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan soared into the sky with the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow on his back. His 10 fingers formed a mudra as he went against the grand Tao of the 5 elements to traverse the heaven and earth. His feet stomped on the earth while his hand grasped the heavens. Boom! Yi Qinghan's powerful palm utilized the power of 3 paragons. He didn't even try to defend and only wanted to kill this paragon in an instant. The paragon was in despair. He ferociously threw out the sword in his hand in order to destroy Yi Qinghan's second sun-shooting arrow. His own hands flipped the sky in order to stop Yi Qinghan's powerful attack. Boom! The universal laws of the paragons shattered the sacred ground. The divine cauldrons emitted boundless light and formed a new 9 cauldrons grand formation that blocked the shockwaves from the battle between the 2 paragons. This place became a true hell without any signs of life. Boom! Boom! Yi Qinghan's palm carried a murderous intent and mercilessly crushed the paragon's heaven-flipping power. It easily shattered the paragon's arms and slammed into his head. The paragon's body collapsed along with the 5 world-ending arrows that completely annihilated his body. An indestructible body could also die. The paragon's soul fell into a hopeless situation as everything was annihilated by absolute power. In the distant sky above the turtle ancestor sacred ground, one could clearly see that the heaven-blessed sacred ground was no more. The light in the sky tore through everything and formed a huge maelstrom. Die! With a roar, Yi Qinghan's figure shifted and turned into several thousand figures. Each of them derived a different destructive technique while holding a peerless 7-foot berserk maniac. Even the black hole was distorted into a berserk maniac. Boom! This attack crossed through the secondary world with the power to annihilate paragons. It was accompanied by the peak power of Yuzun, Ho-e, and himself. In the blink of an eye, it destroyed the heaven-blessed sacred ground. No, you. The paragon was terrified. The paragon was in complete despair. This Yi Qing Han was only a junior, yet he had the merit and power of two paragons, Yu Sovereign and Ho Yi. He also had the power of a paragon invincible within the same realm. This paragon was already at his limit for being able to block so many attacks with his half-crippled body. Boom! Whoosh! An earth-shattering explosion destroyed everything in the heaven-blessed sacred ground. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, after unleashing this destructive power, Yi Qing Han instantly disappeared into thin air. He formed a mudra with both hands and the 7 sun-shooting arrows returned to the quiver. They were not lost. The heaven-blessed sacred ground fell into a dead silence. No, it was no more. It had completely disappeared from this secondary world. Whoosh! Inside the sacred ground, a paragon soared into the sky while holding the turtle ancestor sage in his hand. He wanted to use the sage's shell to stop Yi Qing Han's attack. Whoosh! Yi Qing Han instinctively grabbed the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow with both hands. The 7 arrows combined into one and turned into a dragon and tiger that devoured the sky. No! The turtle ancestor sage struggled in despair, but how could he escape from the restraint of a paragon? His shell erupted with a monstrous power, but it couldn't stop the sun-shooting arrow. Boom! The arrow pierced through the shell. The endless devouring power directly evaporated the turtle ancestor, but it didn't injure the paragon much. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sun-shooting arrow turned into a rainbow that pierced through the secondary world and entered the heaven-seeking realm. Yi Qing Han wanted to summon the sun-shooting arrows, but it was too late. The paragon's sword pierced through the rainbow and activated the power of the secondary world to destroy everything. Yi Qing Han reached out with both hands. He didn't only mobilize the power of the Heaven Surveyor secondary world, but also the power of the entire primal universe. The 9 cauldrons combined into one and unleashed a virtuous paragon's universal law. Together with the dragon and tiger fighting for supremacy, they crazily slammed into the paragon's immortal sword. Whoosh! Yi Qing Han rubbed his palms together. His merit and paragon power poured out. Today, he didn't only want to kill one paragon, he wanted to kill all of the paragons in the Heaven Surveyor secondary world. Since you're here, let's die together. Chapter 3100. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh, in the secondary universe of the heaven-blessed sacred ground, a boundless sword ray swept for millions of miles. The cauldron carried the primal force of the universe along with the power of a paragon. The clash between the sword and the power of a paragon was enough to destroy the world. However, Yi Qing Han had the power of 3 paragons, so he had an overwhelming advantage in repelling the paragon. Buzz, the immortal sword trembled and was pushed back by the cauldron. It was almost bent. The paragon stared at Yi Qing Han in horror and realized that something was wrong. He immediately asked, "Who are you?" Yi Qing Han swung the cauldron and directly knocked the immortal sword away. The paragon's power poured out as he pressed both palms on the paragon's chest. Boom! The paragon's body was deformed. His already wounded body couldn't withstand this kind of damage. This was a force equal to the combined attacks of Yu Sovereign and Ho Yi, and all of them were aimed at his chest. Pluff! The paragon was blown away as his sword left his hand. Whoosh! The little white cloud turned into a whip and directly locked the paragon's wrist. Yi Qing Han forcefully pulled him back and used his knee to smash the paragon's dantian. The paragon's internal organs were about to be shattered. Boom! Boom! Yi Qing Han's fists rained down, causing the paragon to become dizzy. Crack! Crack! The paragon's ribs and skull were all broken. The art of a paragon was exquisite to the extreme and was still able to resist. Its sharp claws tore through the void and directly pierced Yi Qinghan's right chest. Roar! At this moment, the multicolored snake suddenly appeared at Yi Qinghan's waist. Its fangs broke through the laws of order and carried the power of the primal universe to bite through the paragon's waist. All of you will die for blocking my path. Boom! Yi Qinghan ignored his injuries and punched through the paragon's throat. At this moment, the undying paragon was like a lamp without oil. Yi Qinghan used several times the power of a paragon to attack the body of the paragon. He was almost using the power of a false ruler to suppress this paragon. Roar! Hum! The divine cauldron returned and forcefully trapped the half-dead paragon inside. Bang! The cauldron was sealed. The power inside Yi Qinghan's body poured out and burned the cauldron, wanting to refine this paragon alive. Ah! Boom boom boom. The divine cauldron was constantly emitting shockwaves that caused the surrounding space to constantly collapse. Even the Sky Survey subworld could clearly sense it. I am immortal and indestructible. Even the primal universe can't refine it. You can't do anything to me. The virtuous paragon roared inside the cauldron and slammed his fists on the inside. Palm prints appeared on the outside of the cauldrons, but these 9 cauldrons were created by you sovereign after expending countless amounts of vitality and merit. How could a virtuous paragon forcefully shatter them? Yi Qinghan revealed a murderous glint. He roared and mobilized the power of the universe. Even the 3 subworlds and the 9-star domain could feel this destructive force. Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The pressure inside the cauldron was enough to annihilate all things. Even the soul of a virtuous paragon felt despair. The moment the soul gave up, a virtuous paragon would no longer be immortal. In the face of absolute power, this paragon had no choice but to give up. The temperature inside the cauldron refined everything. The body of the virtuous paragon was destroyed. Whoosh! After destroying the body, Yi Qinghan didn't immediately destroy the soul. Instead, his figure flashed and appeared in the Seeking Heaven realm. The sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow emitted a blinding light and guided the 7 sun-shooting arrows back. Whoosh! The 7 arrows soared through the air and rushed back into the quiver. The power of the universe rushed in and quickly replenished Yi Qinghan's energy. The southeastern and southwestern regions of the Sky Survey subworld erupted with destructive power the moment Yi Qinghan killed the first virtuous paragon. Sacred Lord Xianlong shot 9 arrows at the same time. The peak of the 10-arrow art destroyed the 4 directions and forced the virtuous paragon out. Whoosh! Once the sword was unleashed, there would be no return until death. Jian Bugui channeled the power of the subworld and directly annihilated the body of the virtuous paragon the moment he appeared. The virtuous paragon didn't even have time to resist before Jian Bugui derived a second sword on the basis of the first sword. The sword rainbow was earth-shattering and directly pierced through the secondary universe. The entire Xiaoyu sacred ground was annihilated. Ah! The virtuous paragon let out a mournful roar and struggled on the verge of death. The sword pierced through the rainbow and directly pierced through Jian Bugui's body. In this moment of lightning and thunder, Sacred Lord Xianlong recalled the 9 arrows and once again erupted with his peak power. The 9 arrows combined into one and turned into 10 arrows that carried monstrous flames as they collided with the virtuous paragon's arrow. Boom! The 10th arrow carried a ball of flame and blocked the virtuous paragon's arrow. Although it only blocked for a moment, it gave Jian Bugui the 3rd sword. Roar! I will not return until the enemy is destroyed. Jian Bugui and his sword became one. The sword channeled the power of the primal universe and directly pierced through the virtuous paragon. Pluff! The sword pierced through the virtuous paragon, but the virtuous paragon used a thunderous momentum to destroy the 10 arrows and disperse the 10-arrow art. The sword entered Sacred Lord Xianlong's body. He was only a virtuous paragon, yet he sacrificed his last bit of power to destroy a virtuous paragon. Boom! Sacred Lord Xianlong's body exploded. His flesh and blood were evaporated by the power of the virtuous paragon. He died without a complete corpse. Boom! The imitation immortal bow fell down and the quiver disappeared. The 9 arrows dissipated in all directions and were sucked away by the black hole created by the virtuous paragon. Whoosh! 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 Jian Bugui was bathed in a river of blood from the virtuous paragon. He crushed the virtuous paragon's body and unleashed a palm strike on the soul. Screech! The soul issued a mournful cry and unleashed its final attack, a soul attack. Boom! The virtuous paragon's soul self-destructed and destroyed 8 secondary universes nearby while directly sweeping Jian Bugui away. Pluff! Jian Bugui spewed out blood and carried the sword toward the southeast. In the southeastern region, the mortal king's sword revealed its power. It was an existence that suppressed the Tao hearts of all living beings. Virtuous paragons were also one of the living beings. Flame King didn't even directly launch a sneak attack. After forcing the virtuous paragon out, he stepped on a crimson flame with the mortal king's sword in hand and brutally killed the wounded virtuous paragon. In less than 2 hours, 4 virtuous paragons in the Heaven Surveyor subworld were destroyed. However, only 1/5 of the realm remained while half of the secondary universes were destroyed. The shockwaves created by the virtuous paragon's power spread far and wide into the heaven-seeking realm. This was a true world-ending battle. The common people were ants, all things were ants, and no one could save them. The flame instantly annihilated an ancestor. Boom! The shockwaves swept across all directions. Not even a blade of grass was lucky enough to be spared. Inside the heaven-seeking realm, Yi Qinghan carried the sun-shooting immortal vanquishing bow and sun-shooting arrows while holding the divine cauldron. He was refining the virtuous paragon's soul in the primal universe. He couldn't kill the remaining virtuous paragons. Unfortunately, the era was different and their condition was different. Back then, they were heavily wounded by the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. As soon as they rushed out of the suppression, they were ambushed by the 3 great experts of Quang Manor. 4 out of 9. At this time, 3 old men walked out of the Jade Court sacred realm. 3 of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Human Sovereign. Shun Emperor. Sui Sovereign. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Yellow Emperor, Sovereign Yu, and Sovereign Shi, died. Hui virtuous paragon sacrificed his last bit of life to Yi Qinghan. The rest had no power left and could only wait for death. Now, only 3 old men were left. Although they no longer had the momentum of the past, they were still mortal kings. The 3 of them came to the heaven-seeking realm with the belief that they would die. Quang Manor started the battle first and they would follow right after. It was still outside the 9-star field. The other 5 virtuous paragons of the secondary universe all came out. 3 of them had taken away the ruler's energy back then. They had recovered 70 to 80% of their strength and were close to their peak. Their momentum was the strongest. Boom! Yi Qinghan stepped into the 9-star field, followed by Yan Emperor and Jian Bugui. The 3 young paragons looked down on all living beings. Yi Qinghan looked at the 2 behind him. When he saw that Xianlong didn't come, he knew that he was dead. Chapter 3101. Xianlong's death wasn't that sad because Yi Qinghan knew from the start that Xianlong would die as soon as he joined the battle. They couldn't escape the power of a virtuous paragon. Phew, Yi Qinghan breathed out. The only thing he could do now was to destroy the remaining 5 paragons and open up the reincarnation cycle. If he was lucky enough to become a ruler, then he could directly revive some people. Of the 5 paragons, 2 were emaciated and only skin and bones. However, 3 of them were brimming with blood and flesh. This was due to the stolen origin of the ruler's energy granting them a second life. These 5 paragons didn't know Yi Qinghan's identity. They stared at Yi Qinghan, Yan Emperor, and Jian Bugui and could see that they were virtuous paragons at the peak of their power. In a one-on-one fight, none of them would be a match for these 3. A fat man with big ears stared at Yi Qinghan's group and said with a deep voice, "Young man, all the lives in this secondary universe were bestowed by us, yet you dare to kill your ancestors and betray your race." Yi Qinghan and Yan Emperor sneered and said at the same time, "You are blocking my path." Domineering. These 2 were very similar to each other in their bones. Those who block their path must die. Jian Bugui calmly replied, "You are not ancestors, and our lives were not bestowed by you. All the lives in this world came from the evolution of the universe, not from you virtuous paragons. The lives you bestowed upon us are all in the virtuous paragon world." The 5 paragons revealed a ferocious glint as they stared at Yi Qinghan's group. Whoosh! The Nong sovereign, Sui sovereign, and Emperor Shun came with crutches in their hands. They were old heroes past their prime and had sacrificed everything for the continuation of the universe. In terms of merit, these 5 paragons couldn't compare to them. However, the people in the secondary universe believed in them, and they added fuel to the fire in order to create a ruler's empire for eternal life. This was only a lie driven by their greed. The people in the world were ignorant and didn't understand their intentions. If it wasn't for the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and Hou-Yi, they might have been able to enslave the entire universe. Yu Xian, Li Sovereign, are you still obsessed with the universe and want to enslave it and establish your so-called order? The Nong Sovereign lamented and asked with a hoarse voice. The leader, Yu Xian, had a sinister look in his eyes. He was also one of the people who had obtained a lump of the ruler's origin. His power had almost recovered to its peak. He sneered in disdain. "Nong Huang, you old fogies have taken over the original universe's foundation, but you don't know how to use it. You're really useless. You're so old that you can't even hold a weapon." Ha ha ha, Yi Qinghan laughed and signaled Yan King and Jian Bugui with his eyes. He then said, "We'll take care of these 3 good-for-nothings. As for the 2 skinny ghosts, I don't want to waste my breath on them. For virtuous paragons are already dead, I don't care about 5 more." Hua! Yu Xian waved his hand and a divine weapon appeared in his hand. "Crazy manner, I've underestimated you. If I knew that you killed your ancestors and betrayed the secondary universe, I would have destroyed you the moment I came out. But it's not too late to find out now. Our world of virtuous paragons have all moved out. Your crazy manner won't be able to hold on for long." Yi Qinghan sneered and replied resolutely, "No one in the Kuang manor is afraid of death. Since I've taken the initiative to declare war on you, I've already prepared myself to be annihilated. Besides, do you think I'm unprepared?" Hua! Yi Qinghan reached out and grabbed 7 sun-shooting arrows. He drew his bow fully and stepped on the primal universe, distorting the Seeking Heaven domain. The entire Seeking Heaven domain took on a spiral shape. Roar! The sword of no return and the human sovereign sword were unsheathed. They represented the pinnacle of the virtuous paragons while the 5 opponents were not. Even the Nong sovereign, Sui sovereign, and Shun sovereign were not. Hua! The 3 took the space and the 9 cauldrons separated again. They suppressed the surroundings of the 9-star field to prevent the shockwaves from destroying the universe's foundation. Xiu xiu xiu, the 3 experts were everywhere and their swords overlapped. Boom! The 7 arrows merged into one and destroyed the universe. A new order was about to emerge. Hua! Boom! After combining the 7 arrows into one, the arrow of flame engulfed the center of the 5 paragons with an unstoppable momentum. It didn't target the strongest, Yu Xian. Instead, it targeted a bony old man because it was confident in suppressing the overthrown Yu Xian. Boom! Pine. Even though the skinny old man was on guard, he was still blasted away by the 7 arrows. The sword in his hand danced and clashed with the shooting sun arrows. The arrows were shattered, but the skin between his thumb and index finger was cracked, and even his hand that was holding the sword was trembling. Yi Qinghan was paving the way for the Nong sovereign and the other paragons. With the 3 of them working together, they would be able to defeat 2 severely wounded paragons. Hua! Yi Qinghan put away the sun-shooting immortal destroying bow and rushed towards the other bony old man with his bare hands. After sending him flying with a punch, he rushed towards Yu Xian. Yu Xian, let's see how long this old dog can live. Boom! Yi Qinghan stepped on the Seeking Heaven domain and took control of the Origin universe. He joined forces with Supreme Yi and almost reached the level of a pseudo-ruler. With a wave of his hand, the power of the paragons turned into a 7-foot heavy berserk that tore apart the darkness of the Seeking Heaven domain. Xiu xiu xiu, the periphery of the 9-star field was in chaos. 6 against 5. In terms of numbers, Yi Qinghan's group still had the advantage. Yan King and Jian Bugui forced Li Zun's group to separate them. The remaining 2 virtuous paragons were surrounded by the Nong sovereign's group. Although they were decaying, their battle prowess was still frightening. Their virtuous paragon arts were exquisite and could be used with a wave of their hand. They were far more magnificent and soul-stirring compared to Yi Qinghan's group. However, Yi Qinghan relied on absolute power to suppress them. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber split the Seeking Heaven domain. The power of the universe was almost solid to the point of being viscous, making it difficult for others to move. The domain of a virtuous paragon was enough to cause virtuous paragons to despair. When such an expert unleashed a world-ending battle, anyone below virtuous paragon would be cannon fodder. Rumble. Yi Qinghan's afterimages had the power to destroy. His power was monstrous. His fists, legs, and saber worked together seamlessly. He forced Yu Xian out of the 9-star region and into the deepest part of the universe, where black holes were everywhere. Yu Xian used his strongest sword technique and almost tore apart the primordial black hole. However, every time he clashed with Yi Qinghan, he was completely defeated. There was no hope of victory. Yi Qinghan wasn't afraid of facing him head-on since he had the power of Hou-Yi and Yuzun inside his body. Although it wasn't a lot, it was still enough to make others despair. A difference of a millimeter could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. Boom! Yi Qinghan kicked Yu Xian into the primordial black hole and rushed in without any hesitation. They fought inside the black hole until it was completely destroyed by the 2. When they came out again, the heaven and earth collapsed. Even some meteorites that had been ravaged by the primordial universe for countless years were cut apart. Chapter 3102. Inside the primordial black hole, the 2 peak virtuous paragons were slaughtering each other. Saber light and sword shadows, the laws of paragons caused the spectators to feel suffocated. The speed of the swords was so fast that the sages couldn't even catch a trace. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber split the order and sent Yu Xian flying. Even the primordial black hole was torn apart. The 2 appeared in the depths of the heaven-seeking realm, where they couldn't even see their own fingers. This was primordial chaos with no order, laws, or even spirit energy fluctuations. Only paragons could survive and fight in this place. They were using the most fundamental power of the heaven-seeking realm, the power of the universe. Yu Xian was forced to retreat again and again. He didn't even have the slightest chance of defeating Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan, what is your goal? Whoosh! Whoosh! Yu Xian continued to unleash his shocking rainbow sword. He slightly increased the distance between them, hoping to convince Yi Qinghan. My goal is only to destroy you 9 paragons. Yi Qinghan was extremely powerful with the 7-foot frenzy in his hand. He mobilized the power of the universe to imprison the 8 Desolaces and give birth to laws and laws in the heaven-seeking realm. This was a clear indication that he was infinitely close to becoming a false ruler. Strands of order were being born. The grand Tao that went against the 5 elements covered the heaven-seeking realm, giving the land of primordial chaos a luster. Wuxia glared at Yi Qinghan and attacked with all his might. His battle experience was much greater than Yi Qinghan's, but the difference in power was too great. In the face of absolute strength, skills were nothing. We have no enmity between us, so why are you going too far? Wuxia roared. Boom! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed in all directions. At least 10,000 images used different saber arts to slash at Wuxia. Ha 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 ha! The depths of the heaven-seeking realm were filled with Yi Qinghan's wild laughter. The great Wuxia actually dared to say such words, it was truly laughable. Boom! After the laughter, the 10,000 images merged into one to form an attack capable of destroying the universe. The saber split the cosmos as if the primordial chaos had just been born. Countless laws and laws of order shot out from the depths and slashed at Wuxia. The heaven-seeking frenzy collapsed the universe. Boom! Poof! Wuxia was blown away by this slash. The bones in his hand were broken and his paragon power was blocked. His blood became stagnant as he spewed out a mouthful of essence blood. Even the indestructible heaven-seeking domain was pierced through. Wuxia, you're ridiculous. When you were strong, you could slaughter all living things. When you were weak, you questioned me for going too far. Then let me ask you, when you massacred the primal universe and caused the deaths of all living things in 9-star zone, did you ask yourself if you were going too far? Yi Qinghan stomped on the flying Wuxia. His saber was unstoppable as it slashed down once more, knocking Wuxia into the endless abyss of Qiu Tian domain. Roar! The virtuous nether sword pierced through Qiu Tian's domain, causing flames to erupt from the friction, but it couldn't stop him from losing. Wuxia angrily roared, we are virtuous paragons and can become rulers with a wave of our hands. How can we be compared to ants? Boom! Yi Qinghan looked at the struggling Wuxia and pierced his saber through Qiu Tian domain. His eyes were filled with disdain as he looked down on Wuxia. In my eyes, you're not a virtuous paragon, only an ant that I can casually slaughter. Thus, you have no right to ask me if I'm going too far. Wuxia, I'll show you the power of a false ruler. Yi Qinghan's powerful soul fused with sovereign Yi. At least 3 strands of ruler's energy gathered in his sea of consciousness. The ruler's origin energy was the ruler's order. As long as one could comprehend it, they would be able to dominate all laws of order. No order could transcend. At this moment, the little white cloud gave up on strengthening Yi Qinghan and instead accompanied the ruler's energy. The ruler's order actually took the initiative to recognize Yi Qinghan. In the blink of an eye, the primal universe became a huge net with each node representing a different law of order. Condense. Yi Qinghan frowned and pointed a finger in Wuxian's direction. Caging heaven's order appeared in the surrounding space and chaos, firmly restraining Wuxia in that space. A ruler's domain. It surpassed the limits of a virtuous paragon's control. Although Yi Qinghan wasn't a ruler, he could still control Wuxian's fate. This was enough. Bind. Yi Qinghan's 10 fingers formed a seal and forcefully pulled Wuxia, who was struggling in the abyss, towards him. Lin. Yi Qinghan's fingers turned into palms. His palms were filled with ruler's order, capable of dominating everything. Boom! His palms pushed forward rapidly and pressed directly on Wuxian's chest as if they were twigs. Wuxia was horrified. He could feel the ruler's order shooting out from Yi Qinghan's palms, forcibly suppressing the virtuous paragon's order within his body. His vitality was rapidly being wiped out. No. Yi Qinghan. I am a virtuous paragon recognized by the universe. You dare kill your ancestor? Yu Xian roared in despair. Yi Qinghan's ruler's order forcefully entered Yu Xian's body, directly destroying the order within it. You are a virtuous paragon recognized by the primal universe, but I am different. I don't need the universe's recognition, but the primal universe needs my recognition. Otherwise, I will forcibly dissolve the order and lay down a new order to rebuild the laws. Yi Qinghan's palms turned into fists and his wrists moved back an inch. Then, he rotated his palms and attacked Yu Xian's heart. Boom! Pft! Yu Xian's heart completely shattered. The order within his body was scattered, and his eyes were filled with despair. The virtuous paragon's order he controlled and no longer listened to him. Even his fate seemed to be under Yi Qinghan's control. This is the power of a false ruler. Yu Xian looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. He didn't expect a junior to reach this step and have the power to make him despair. Yes, this is the power of a false ruler. It comes from the bones of virtuous paragon Yu Zun and the insights of virtuous paragon Ho Yi. Then, the ruler's origin transformed into a human form to communicate with me. I have obtained 30% of the ruler's order, which is enough to deal with an ant like you. Whatever you can destroy, I can restore. Yi Qinghan's eyes shone brightly. His fist technique evolved into a palm technique, but this time, it directly cut into Yu Xian's body and tore it apart. Whoosh! Yu Xian's body erupted with a monstrous divine light. Ah! Yu Xian roared in despair. He felt all the essence within his body being forcefully taken away by Yi Qinghan. No! I won't die. Yu Xian screamed in despair. After living for so many years, how could he be willing to die? Yi Qinghan forcefully devoured Yu Xian's life force and origin and coldly replied, that depends on whether I agree to let you live or not. Yu Xian's body, which was originally brimming with vitality, dried up once more. The sword in his hand fell from his hand and fell into the abyss. Boom! After Yi Qinghan devoured 90% of Yu Xian's origin, he evaporated Yu Xian's body with one palm. Yu Xian's flesh and blood turned into nothingness. It was as if Yu Xian had never existed. Yi Qinghan looked at the endless abyss and didn't go to take the divine weapon. Yu Xian's traces should no longer appear. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan turned and left, rushing towards the 9-star realm. Chapter 3103. Outside the 9 stars domain, the divine cauldron laid down a divine array to prevent the aftermath of the battle between the virtuous paragons from destroying the foundation of the universe. The foundation of the original universe was the 9-star sector. The original universe continued to extend, creating countless secondary universes. If the order of the original universe collapsed, all the secondary universes would be destroyed. Hiss! Qi Yan let out a long hiss and broke the order. Li Zun was suppressed by Yan Emperor. Qi Yan's forelimbs broke the defense and kicked Li Zun away. The Flame Emperor and Qi Yan cooperated seamlessly and were extremely powerful. Li Zun was defeated, but the virtuous paragon's vitality was limitless. Even the Flame Emperor couldn't forcefully suppress him. Boom! Roar! Li Zun had been forcefully sent flying countless times. His combat power was getting weaker and weaker. His qi, blood, and vitality that he had worked so hard to recover were destroyed once again. His body dried up. His ferocious aura filled the surroundings as he rushed into the depths of Qiu Tian region. Roar! The sword of the human sovereign suddenly split into 5. The 5 celestial swords of heaven, earth, human sovereign, and reincarnation surrounded revered Li. The great Tao of the human sovereign actually crossed the Qiu Tian region. A new order was actually born under his divine will. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Puchi. In the blink of an eye, at least 10,000 sword shadows pierced through Li Zun's defense. Qi Yan evolved into his 4th state. The flames all over his body were like the scorching sun, burning the chaos. His 4 limbs twisted in the beginning of the chaos. Together with the Emperor's sword, he kicked Li Xun to death. Ah! Li Xun screamed. This was the second paragon on the verge of death. Immortal and indestructible, they had no fear at all and had no compassion. However, once they fell into a hopeless situation, their despair was far more miserable than that of ordinary people. The Yen Emperor saw the hope of reviving the 9-colored Brahma heart. After severely injuring Li Xun, the 5 swords merged into one. The human sovereign sword force was unstoppable. It suppressed the heavens and disappeared into the Yen Emperor's path. Then, it reappeared out of thin air. The man and sword union pierced through Li Xun's saint body. His soul was annihilated, and his body was destroyed. Boom! The body of a virtuous paragon was torn to pieces and had no chance of defeating the Yen Emperor, who was at the peak of his power. Whoosh! At the moment of Li's sovereign's death, Yen King's sword swept across the battlefield and joined the Nong King's battle. The Nong King was old and powerless. Even when facing the bony paragon, he could only keep the situation in check. Die! The Flame Imperial sword's momentum was like a rainbow. Its sharp sword energy swept through everything and directly severed the paragon's waist, instantly wiping out 30% of his vitality. Bang! Crimson Flame's forelimbs shattered his upper body, exposing his soul. Nong Huang used all of his strength and almost used his life to shatter his lower body. Roar! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! A sword ray wrapped around his soul. A virtuous paragon was completely annihilated by the combined efforts of the Flame King, Crimson Flame, and the Nong King. The shockwaves rippled out, and even the divine cauldron was blasted away. A portion of the power entered the Purple Sun subrealm, bringing disaster to countless creatures. A primitive power rushed out from the 9 stars domain. This was the self-protection of the original universe. Otherwise, the entire 9 stars domain would have been destroyed. The Doomsday battle was just that cruel. Seniors, guard the 9-star domain. Leave these 2 to me and Taoist Jian Bugui. Yen Emperor wielded his sword and moved forward, pressing down on the other severely injured sage. Nong Sovereign, Shun Sovereign, and Sui Sovereign took a few steps back. They exchanged a glance and smiled in relief. They had dedicated their lives to the survival of the universe, and with Kuang Manor's replacement, they would be able to live a much easier life in the future. Jian Bugui's undying aura forced the other sage to retreat step by step. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, the other sage actually had thoughts of escaping. Roar! At this time, a sun-shooting arrow capable of shattering the universe came from the void and directly pierced through the virtuous paragon's heart. Blood splattered everywhere as a miserable scream resounded. His body fell down on the spot. Whoosh! The sun-shooting arrow didn't stop there. It pierced through the Chiu heaven realm and disappeared without a trace. Yi Qinghan has returned. He killed that virtuous paragon with one move. The 9 unkillable virtuous paragons back then were all annihilated in one day. It was unfortunate that they had revived in the wrong era. If they had revived 10,000 years earlier, Kuang Manor would have been able to destroy the original universe. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors would have fallen, and no one would be able to go against their will. Unfortunately, Kuang Manor was able to grow. Yi Qinghan stepped into the battlefield with a heavy hand. His expression was solemn as he swept his gaze across the battlefield and flew towards the ancient immortal subworld. At this moment, the ancient immortal subrealm was also affected by this apocalyptic battle. Even though only 5 of the 9 virtuous paragons' worlds were mobilized, this was still a terrifying number. Without the participation of any virtuous paragons, this was enough to destroy the world. Kuang Manor had an army of 50 million with the support of the Northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom and the other subsidiary powers. This was an army of more than 100 million. The previous generation of Kuang Manor was mobilized to form a formation. The alchemy god elder followed the order of the first generation sacred lord and mobilized all the experts above the ancestor realm in the ancient immortal subrealm to help Quang Manor and northern Xiong defend their territories. All of Quang Manor's forces were gathered in the north. The ancient massacre god, the assassins, the first and second division of the Heaven Conquest Camp, the private army, and the inner and outer sect armies were all present. Even in the face of a force several times stronger than before, Quang Manor's cohesiveness actually increased. Chen Bei and the rest of the younger generation from Ho Yi's world were all here. Seeing the power of Yi Qinghan's insane mansion, they couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. This kind of person was only pretending to be crazy, but they had recklessly run into him. How lucky they were to be alive. The two armies were rapidly approaching. The older generation of Quang Manor, the second and third generation of Quang Manor all stood at the front, listening to the orders of Chess Saint and Void Saint Chess. No one was afraid of death. Their steps were firm and the earth trembled. Boom! The vanguard was the first to clash. It was a battle between sages. The army formed a formation to block the shockwaves. Including Qian Yixue, Xing Xian, and Xiao Yu, there were more than 10 experts from Quang Manor. There were less than 50 sages in the virtuous Paragon world, but they were fighting 3 times the number of sages. Sages were constantly falling from the sky. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven used his turtle shell to move around. With his speed, he could almost instantly kill those of the same realm without any defense. Ha ha ha, this old man has endured for so many years. Finally, it's time to be free. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven flashed through the air, leaving afterimages everywhere. The experts in the virtuous Paragon world were terrified and didn't have the heart to fight. Yan Yunbei held the Fang dagger and killed almost all of them in one blow, not giving them any chance to retaliate. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Gu Qingyu, Lin Wutian, Li Peiza, Huo Ling Tian, Yi Qinxing, Heaven's Equal Monkey King, Shi Gu, and the others released their final radiance. It was a battle to the death. Rivers of blood flowed and dyed the sky red. Xing Xian, Qian Yixue, and Xiao Yu had no way out. They could only bet on Quang Manor's victory. The situation wasn't good for Quang Manor. Chess Saint looked at the big picture and stared at the left flank. Suddenly, he waved the flag in his hand and the war drums rumbled. The Conquest Camp and the ancient massacre god worked together to forcefully tear apart the battle between the sages and pulled 8 of them into the formation. The Conquest Camp and the ancient massacre god were fighting with their lives on the line in order to buy time for Quang Manor's experts. In the northern part of northern Xiong, the flames of war flattened the secondary universe. Existences died miserably as disasters spread everywhere. This world-ending battle wasn't just limited to virtuous paragons and sages. Kill. Boom boom boom. The sounds of battle and war drums intertwined, causing despair but also making one's blood boil. Chapter 3104. North of the northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom, the sages had reached the dome, and the army had officially begun to attack. Hundreds of millions of troops were charging, and the situation was quite tragic. There were countless casualties, and corpses piled up like mountains. Soldiers all had their own ambitions and ideals. Perhaps the best ending for them would be to die in battle. Don't laugh while lying drunk on the battlefield. Since ancient times, how many people have returned from battle? At the beginning of the final battle, they had already drunk wine to send off their brothers and themselves. In this battle, the 100 million soldiers of the Quang Manor were determined to die. If they won, their descendants would be able to live a peaceful life, forever free from the chaos of war. Kill. The ancient massacre gods were the most ferocious. They didn't fight against armies of the same level, but under the leadership of the Chess Saint, they joined forces with the Heaven Conquest Camp to encircle and annihilate the sages. Their casualties were extremely fast, but with so many progenitors working together, they actually suppressed several sages. Even if they died, they wouldn't regret it. The army was determined to die, and the enemy army was forced to retreat. The star-profound Holy Land was forced into a corner, and the army was sent out. They were like ants that were constantly being harvested, and the casualties were heavy. The star-profound sage was going all out for the final battle. Under the leadership of the first sacred master, the people of Ho Yi's world fought to the death and became the savior of the world. At this moment, everyone understood the merits of Ho Yi. They were protecting everything that Ho Yi sacrificed his life for. Spears pierced through flesh and blood, taking away supreme lives. The sages were no longer high and mighty. They were either dead or injured. The experts of the crazed manor were all drenched in blood, and some even began to die. Giant axe Nya Tian swept through the army with his giant axe, but he couldn't stop the number of people. He was pierced by hundreds of divine spears and arrows. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive, but he was quickly dragged back to the rear by the rescue team. Lin Wuqian's sword pierced through the clouds, shocking the world and making ghosts and gods cry. It was as if he was exchanging lives for lives. The sages were caught off guard, and 2 of them were killed in succession, while several others were heavily injured. Gu Qingyu, Huoling Tian, Yi Qinqing, and the others were covered in blood. The earth shook and the sky shook as the will to die erupted in their eyes. Roar! Li Pei's spear froze 10,000 miles, and the void of the subworld was sealed. The Monkey King's staff shattered the sky, and the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers changed color. The sky almost collapsed, and swept through the sages. Each of the sages of Insane Manor was like a god of war. They were dressed in blood-red robes and their roars made the heroes feel like their guts were being torn apart. Under the leadership of the Void Saint Chess and Lu Outyen, the 2 battalions of the Heaven-Conquering Battalion, the private army of the Crazy Manor, the inner sect, and the outer sect were not something a mob could compare to. Especially under the charge of the Ancestor Realm experts who were not afraid of death, they were invincible and directly cut the enemy army of hundreds of millions in half, killing them separately. The people from the world of the virtuous paragons had long since lost their killing intent. At this moment, they were filled with despair. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they were powerless against the Crazy Manor and didn't want to fight anymore. Kill! Mu Zhuang's face turned red, and his blood rushed to his head. At this moment, there was only slaughter in his mind. He only wanted to protect the Crazy Mansion Immortal Kingdom. That was the holy land of countless brothers of the Crazy Mansion. He would not allow anyone to tarnish it. Every inch of land was covered in blood. Every inch of land was covered in blood and bones. Whoosh! Roar! A wooden sword dyed the blue sky, and the blood of a 7-foot man splashed across the rainbow. I have never regretted it. The cries of countless people before their deaths sent chills down the spines of the experts from the virtuous Paragon world. Even the experts from Ho Yi's world were stunned. They had never seen such a tenacious army. Each soldier was like the older generation of Insane Mansion. None of them retreated out of fear of death. They had never regretted it. Even if they died in the next moment, they would die with smiles on their faces. The enemy army was finally pushed back. They didn't dare to fight anymore. Whoever charged to the front would definitely die the fastest. It was the same no matter how strong they were. Even sages were rapidly falling, let alone ancestors. The corpses piled up higher than a main city. The entire secondary universe was trampled to pieces. Countless creatures in the secondary universe were annihilated. The sky was red, and so was the earth. Everything was dyed red by the exuberant blood. At this moment, Yi Qinghan tore open the seal between the Seeking Heaven domain and the Primal Chaos Heavenly domain and entered the battlefield. Boom! His aura burst forth, and the aura of a false ruler spread out, covering the entire secondary realm. Seal! Yi Qinghan's hand covered the sky, blocking all laws. Even the sages lost control and fell from the void. The army lost the support of laws and order and became mortals. Even the crazy mansion army lost control. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and his divine sense covered everyone. The crazy mansion army all had special tokens. As long as one's divine sense touched them, they could be taken away. The two sides were quickly separated. The crazed manor had suffered heavy losses. Almost all of the inner sex elites had been crippled. Those of the older generation who had not reached the sage plane had almost lost their lives because of the fierce battle. Hiss! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and waved his hand to cover the sky, trapping all of the enemy's sages in one area. A terrifying soul blast blasted out, killing all of the enemy's sages. Boom! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and killed all the ancestors at the front of the enemy army, not leaving a single one alive. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots had always been his principle. Yi Qinghan coldly said, "The 9 paragons have been destroyed. All of you, retreat." Hundreds of millions of soldiers were only ordered by virtuous paragons, they were not the main culprits. They were merely following orders and could be changed. At this moment, the situation was completely under his control. If he continued the slaughter, then his original intentions would change. The army had long since given up on fighting. After learning that the virtuous paragons were dead, they didn't even think about taking revenge. Thus, after receiving Yi Qinghan's permission, they turned and left, not even looking back. Yi Qinghan ordered people to gather all the dead soldiers of Crazy Mansion in northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom, except for the corpses that were not even left behind. These people had only been dead for a short time, so their soul energy hadn't dissipated too far. With his soul, he could completely distort the order and summon their souls back. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's hands formed a seal, and the sovereign order covered the entire secondary universe. A new order was born, repairing their broken bodies and allowing their soul energy to return to their bodies. The order of soul energy in each body was different, so it wasn't difficult to revive them. The truly difficult ones were those who had been dead for many years. Even the corpses of those heroes couldn't be found. Only by clearing the reincarnation cycle could they be revived. This was already an ability that surpassed the virtuous paragons. A large number of dead soldiers were slowly awakening. Their souls weren't missing, and their bodies had become even stronger. Yi Qinghan was sweating profusely. His soul was exhausted. In the end, he wasn't a sovereign, at least not right now. He could only rely on his soul to distinguish the dissipated energy and repair the dead bodies, reviving them one by one. Poof! Spitting out a mouthful of essence blood, Yi Qinghan used up an endless amount of soul energy to revive the dead soldiers of Crazy Mansion. Chapter 3105. Within the borders of the northern Xiong Immortal Empire, Yi Qinghan used his own strength to revive tens of millions of soldiers. Although it seemed easy, he understood that reviving these soldiers would exhaust a large amount of his blood and qi. If he wanted to revive those who had been dead for countless years or whose corpses couldn't even be found, it would be extremely difficult. Outside of 9-star regions, the Divine Cauldron was guarding the original universe. The last virtuous paragon was killed. The 9 virtuous paragons revived quickly but died even faster. Hu, Yen Emperor breathed out a mouthful of turbid air. There were 2 paths in front of him. The first was to clear the reincarnation cycle and find the souls of the fallen Yen clan so that they could return to his side through reincarnation. The second was to reach the ruler realm and control all life in the universe so that they could appear by his side. Regardless of which path it was, he would no longer be obstructed. The only opponent who could possibly defeat him was Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan also wanted to revive some people, such as the resentful dragon, Yen Ao, Zhang Fan, the ancient celestial emperor, and a large number of heroes who had died in the past. They had the same goal and no one wanted to enslave the entire universe. The chance of them becoming enemies was close to zero. The Nong sovereign, Sui sovereign, and Emperor Shun all breathed out a mouthful of turbid air. Even if they were to die, they would have no regrets. Yuzun, Hou-Yi, Yellow Emperor, did you all see it? Sui sovereign looked up at the sky and sighed. The battle back then was so fierce because so many people had sacrificed their lives. Yi Qinghan, Jian Bugui, and Yan Emperor worked together to kill the 9 virtuous paragons. The 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and Hou-Yi's sacrifice played a huge role. Jian Bugui and Yan Emperor slightly bowed towards the 3 virtuous paragons, acknowledging their contributions and virtues. Seniors, we will come back to clear the reincarnation cycle and establish a new order. Yan Emperor solemnly said. The 3 virtuous paragons smiled and bowed back. Thank you, Tao friends, for your help. I thank you on behalf of the original universe and all life for allowing the universe to continue. Gnome Sovereign solemnly said. Senior, there is no need to be so polite. We all have our own ideals, and it is our common ideals that brought us together. Our mental states are far inferior to you and the other virtuous paragons. The Flame Emperor spoke the truth. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. Nong Huang and the others returned to the Jade Court while Jian Bugui and Yan Huang retreated. In the northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom, Yi Qinghan ordered people to bury the 9 paragons. The Quang Manor's army of over 100 million had not suffered any losses, and all the dead had been revived. Yi Qinghan held a pure white cloud in his hand. The 3 sovereign energies were separated by him. Looking at the familiar faces of the crazed manor, he smiled from the bottom of his heart. Brothers and sisters, our Quang Manor has won. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and took a deep breath. He let out a deep roar, venting all that he had sacrificed over the years. The insane manor is invincible. The older generation of the Quang Manor was also extremely excited. They had never felt such glory before. Invincible. Whoosh! 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 The army was in unison. Everyone saluted the ancient massacre god. They had experienced the final battle and were now the people of the insane manor. Whether it was the private army or the ancient massacre god, they were the strongest army of the insane manor. Invincible. Yi Qinghan chuckled. That's right. Ever since he was young, he had been invincible and undefeatable. At this time, the chess saint's face was filled with vicissitudes. He watched Yi Qinghan walk step by step and almost became his enemy several times. Who would have thought that he would become a strong backing for his success in the end? What is the final step? The chess saint asked with a smile. Yi Qinghan looked at the expectant eyes of the Quang Mansion's army and sighed. The last step was to revive some of the dead, some of the people who shouldn't have died. Only he knew how difficult this step was. At this time, the Flame Emperor and Jian Bugui returned to the northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom. Seeing that the situation was settled, they looked at Yi Qinghan. You can revive the dead? The Flame Emperor asked expectantly. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said helplessly, I can revive the recently dead, but I can't do anything about the past. Do you think we should clear the reincarnation cycle and retrieve their soul energy and send them into reincarnation one by one, or find a way to enter the sovereign realm? The Flame Emperor took a deep breath. There was some disappointment in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. Let's clear the reincarnation cycle first and let the order return. Then, let's work together and try. Perhaps we can reach that step. The Flame Emperor said. Jian Bugui stood not far away and said indifferently, count me in. Yi Qinghan smiled and nodded. How could 3 virtuous paragons not be able to go against the order of the universe? All Insane Manor army, return to the Immortal Kingdom. The day after tomorrow, there will be a celebration. Then, you can choose your own life according to your ideals and goals. Yi Qinghan looked at the army and said. Yes. Whoosh. Boom. The army was in unison and their momentum was like a rainbow. The entire subworld trembled. Under the command of the older generation of the Insane Manor, the army returned to the Insane Manor Immortal Kingdom. Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor walked side by side into the original universe. The first step to clearing the reincarnation cycle was to start from the foundation of the original universe. If this place was blocked, the reincarnation cycle would be crippled. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took the 9 divine cauldrons and worked with the Flame Emperor to sort out the laws and principles of the 9-star field. The spiritual energy began to circulate. This meant that in a few years, new life would be born in the 9 planets. The people of the 3rd planet could also enter the era of cultivation. Boom! Boom! Whoosh! Miracles filled the original universe. The great Tao rumbled and thousands of Taos appeared. The reverse 5 elements great Tao shrouded the 3rd planet. The Flame Emperor's great Tao followed and moved side by side. The blocked ancient flood path was forcefully cleared by a terrifying force. Endless energy formed a cycle with the flood path through the universe foundation. The soul energy passed through the flood path and entered a parallel space. The laws and principles of the original universe here reorganized the soul energy according to the order. This was the power of a ruler that no one could control. In the vast parallel space, energy was surging. It was unknown how many years it had been since reincarnation. Even if there were people who could reincarnate, it was an extremely small number, and it could only be done by chance and coincidence. Now that the torrent path and the chaotic oceanic trench had been opened, the original universe would definitely evolve. When the time came, the secondary universe would multiply, or even countless times. As the era developed, the original universe would grow stronger. Progenitors and sages would not be in the minority. When the time came, people of this realm might become a member of the masses. Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor looked at the parallel space. Dark clouds covered the sky and the energy was black. It was incomparably violent, just like hell. Or perhaps it was even more terrifying than hell. The storm formed by the convergence of soul energy could tear even stronger people apart. Only virtuous paragons like them could survive. The flood path had been opened. The sages were the connection between the flood path and the chaotic oceanic trench. Yi Qinghan and the Flame Emperor worked together and borrowed the order of the original universe to connect to the secondary universe. Their virtuous paragon law could reach the dome of the universe. Even the primal chaos origin in the depths of the heaven-seeking domain was covered by their divine intents. When they were opening the reincarnation cycle, they had a deeper understanding of the original universe and the heaven-seeking domain. Their power rose along with it, almost reaching the pseudo-ruler realm. The chaotic oceanic trench began to connect, but they were all hidden in the dark. Only virtuous paragons could interfere with the reincarnation cycle. Order was order. Yi Qinghan didn't want anyone to mess around in the future. Rumble. 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 The chaotic oceanic trench rapidly surged through the ancient flood path like rivers converging into an ocean, forming an even more terrifying energy storm. The 3,000 secondary universes and the worlds of virtuous paragons began to connect with the reincarnation cycle. This was the most basic reincarnation cycle of hell. Nothing could escape its shackles. This wasn't done by Yi Qinghan or the Flame Emperor, but it was forcefully interrupted by virtuous paragon Yuzun. The 2 war gods stood on the reincarnation cycle of hell as the storm blew their battle robes. It was almost impossible for them to find so many dead people from the cycle of hell unless they controlled the original universe's foundation and the reincarnation cycle of hell to become a true ruler. The 2 frowned as a sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Let's try. The Flame Emperor looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly and suggested in a deep voice. Going against the laws and principles of the original universe was a very risky thing to do. Let's try. Yi Qinghan said firmly. The 2 looked at the reincarnation cycle of hell. This place had the most powerful time laws and principles. If they went against the cycle of hell, they would become a ruler. If the two worked together, they might have a 10% chance. At this time, Jian Bugui came with his sword and stood beside the two. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and Jian Bugui pressed on it. Then, the Flame Emperor did the same. The three of them merged their consciousness and communicated with the original universe, hoping that the original universe would agree to their heaven-defying act. However, the original universe's laws and principles of order sent a different message. Reviving some people would change history. Time and space would be in chaos and order would collapse. Unless they reached the ruler realm and set up new laws and principles of order to stabilize the order of time and space, it would not be possible. However, the three of them were determined. They would not give up after coming so far. Whoosh! Endless power gushed out from the three of them at the same time. They forcefully summoned the power of the universe and separated the energy storm. The heaven-defying act had officially begun. Whoosh! Wang! Separating the soul energy was not the most difficult thing for the three paragons. The most difficult thing was to revive them. The power to dominate everything was born under the combined efforts of the three paragons. They were rapidly distinguishing the origin of soul energy, quickly finding the familiar life energy and distinguishing them one by one. Their souls replaced the laws of order, just like the true cycle of reincarnation, dominating the fates of the heroes who had died, allowing them to reunite completely. Time passed and the energy storm became more violent. The laws and principles of order from the original universe had no emotions, but their existence was to allow the living beings to operate according to the laws and principles of order. Yi Qinghan and the other two could not disobey them. The three paragons were fighting against the foundation of the original universe. The fate roulette in the Jade Court Saint realm was on the verge of collapse. The three paragons, Nong Sovereign, Sui Sovereign and Monarch Shun, were trying their best to stabilize the universe's foundation so that it would not collapse. Boom! The energy storm struck their bodies under the control of the universe's laws, and if they were the saints, they would have died already. But they were still standing proudly. As time passed, their souls started to grow tired. They were not rulers after all, and they were not sentient beings of order. Find some people and let the others reincarnate according to the hell's reincarnation order. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and groaned. Zhang Fan, nine-colored Brahma heart, Yen Ao, resentful dragon, and ancient heavenly emperor had not died for too long. Although their soul energy had dissipated, it was not too difficult to find them. Soon, they did it. But Yen Emperor found one more soul energy, Yen Yu's. Hua! The three paragons took the soul energy of these people. Their soul energy was stronger and easier to find. On the other hand, Yi Qinghan's mother Wang Shi's soul energy was too weak. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven to find her soul energy. Boom! The soul energy storm sank into the hell's reincarnation. The three paragons smiled at each other and left the hell's reincarnation order. Reuniting the soul and reconstructing the body was a simple task for the paragons. Half a day later, the others were all resurrected except for nine-colored Brahma heart. She was a treasure that took human form. The materials needed to reconstruct her body were very special. Yen Emperor did not dare to be careless. He gathered the best immortal herbs in the universe to reconstruct her body. Yi Qinghan and Jian Bugui did not disturb Yen Emperor's final effort. They brought the resurrected Yen Ao, resentful dragon, and the others to the heaven-suppressing palace. The ancient heavenly emperor did not expect himself to be resurrected. Yen Yu looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. Yi Qinghan didn't feel much anger or hatred. He owed the ancient heavenly emperor and Gu Jiutian a favor, so it was natural for him to be revived. However, Yen Yu killed his own son and killed his own people. The Flame Emperor must have his reasons for reviving him, so Yi Qinghan didn't say much. Principal Heavenly Emperor, let the hatred between us go with the wind. His Highness Jiutian is still waiting for you. Let me send you there. Hua! With a wave of his hand, Yi Qinghan twisted the void and sent the ancient Heavenly Emperor to Gu Jiutian's little house. Gu Jiutian did not expect the ancient Heavenly Emperor to really come back alive. He immediately burst into tears. Looking at Gu Jiutian's haggard appearance, the ancient Heavenly Emperor's heart ached. Back then, he was too stubborn. He neglected his only daughter's feelings and caused her to be hurt again and again. Jiutian, I never thought that we would meet again. Come with me to thank Manor Lord Yi. The ancient Heavenly Emperor hugged Gu Jiutian as tears flowed down his cheeks. In the heaven-suppressing palace, everyone in the palace district retreated, allowing the Quang Manor's army to set up camp. There were over 100 million soldiers, and each table had 10 people. The mountains were filled with their people. Other than drinking, they were also gambling. They were drunk and unguarded. They were laughing and chatting happily, and they were exceptionally relaxed. The Quang Manor's older generation shuttled through the army and drank with them until they were drunk. Emperor Yi, Medusa, Green Lotus Sword Fairy, Boss, Jian Qinxue, Fan Yin, Xianyuan Qingyun, and the others were all present. In the last battle, they all fought outside the main emperor palace. Even if they could not drink, they still had to drink. In this banquet, there was no hierarchy, no strong or weak. There was only the friendship between brothers and sisters. The Quang Manor's older generation, Zixian, Xia Ziluo, Nye Tian, and the others, although they were not strong, the Quang Manor's older generation did not exclude them. Mu Zhuang, Li Peize, Yi Qinxing, Hualing Tian, Gu Qingyu, Qi Tian Monkey King, Huang Huang, Li Feng, Mo Li, Wu Yan, Ches Saint, Bo Ai Saint, Sui Shuguang, Huang Peng, Di Long Tian, Lu Outyan, Stan Wuxia, and the others all entered the army. At this moment, Yi Mengxi's eyes were no longer emotionless. Instead, there was a hint of gentleness. Back then, she entered the emotionless Dao while Shirgu entered the mad demon Dao. She was touched by this. Now, there was love in the depths of emotionlessness. Now, they were a pair of celestial beings. Hua! Yan Ao and Dragon's resentment came side by side. Many people did not know Dragon's resentment, but who didn't know Yan Ao? Welcome back, Marshal Yan. Hua! The army stood up and raised their cups in celebration. Yan Ao's handsome face revealed a happy smile. His body was as straight as a javelin as he bowed like an ancient killing god. Yan Ao looked at the army and said in a deep voice, Yan Ao's greatest success and glory is to join the Quang Manor and fight alongside you all. This is also our greatest success and glory. The army did not hesitate. These were their heartfelt words. They had never regretted it. Even if they died, they would not regret it. Yi Qinghan slowly walked over and said with a smile, let me introduce everyone. Everyone knows Yan Ao. This brother beside him is one of my earliest brothers, Dragon's Resentment. He has followed me since the Great Wasteland Domain. Now that he has returned, he is also a member of the Quang Manor. Welcome, Brother Dragon's Resentment. Ha ha ha. Huang Peng laughed. He was extremely excited and directly pounced over Dragon's Resentment, Huang Peng, Yan Ao. These three were Yi Qinghan's earliest brothers. Their relationship was definitely the most sincere. The muscular Dragon's Resentment had endured countless years of torture. He shed blood but not tears. But now, he was crying like a child. He hugged Yan Ao and Huang Peng tightly. Yi Qinghan also hugged his three brothers. His eyes were also filled with tears. But today was a joyous day. He forced himself to hold back. Jian Bugui stood on the heaven-gazing mountain in the heaven-suppressing palace, looking at Yi Qinghan. Zhang Fan stood beside her and smiled. Bugui, if you like him, why don't you pursue him? Jian Bugui pursed his lips and smiled. He shook his head and said, "Master, my heart is old. Just watch." Sigh. Zhang Fan sighed and did not say anything else. Jian Bugui was not an ordinary woman. She had her own thoughts. Or perhaps, she was too mature. She was a close friend, but not a lover. Hua. At the same time, the ancient heavenly monarch brought Gu Jiutian to the heaven-suppressing palace. The crazed Manor's army looked at the ancient heavenly monarch in silence. But moments later, they felt relieved. Yi Qinghan owed them and they must be repaid one day. Hua. The ancient heavenly monarch knelt outside the heaven-suppressing palace. Not to Yi Qinghan, but to the martyr's monument on the left. Dong dong dong. The ancient heavenly monarch kowtowed 9 times to express his guilt. At this moment, the crazed Manor's army felt relieved and let go of their hatred. Gu Jiutian bowed to the crazed Manor's army and said, "Thank you for your generosity. Jiutian is willing to repay you with his life." Hua. The army bowed back. Gu Jiutian was not the ancient heavenly monarch. Furthermore, Gu Jiutian had helped the crazed Manor's army before. From today onwards, the hatred will dissipate. For 3 days, we will drink and talk about our dreams. As for those who sacrificed themselves, I will find a way to get them all back, said Yi Qinghan as he raised his cup. Since the Manor Master had spoken, no one dared to say anything. Then let's drink. I failed that day and today, I will get it back, said Jiang Jingtian as he raised a jar of wine and glared at Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, and the others. The crowd laughed. Back then, when they fought for the ruler's energy source, the dozen of them drank so much that they almost vomited their organs out. Xiao at this moment, Yan Emperor appeared on the heaven-suppressing palace's wall while holding the hand of a beautiful lady. He laughed, "Ha ha ha, count me in. Let's drink till we're drunk. I'll participate as well. Whoever falls last, I'll grant you 3 wishes." Yi Qinghan said with a hearty laugh. Then let's do it. The crazed Manor's army was excited and even Yi Shaosha was licking his lips. "Boss, count me in." Pa. Yi Qinghan slapped Yi Shaosha away and mocked, "This guy can't join." Xiao. Supreme Yi, Little Baihu, God-devouring eagle and Little Golden Crow all ran out. "Boss, grant me 1 wish." Turn Supreme Yi into Golden Crow. "I want him to pay for what he did back then," said Little Golden Crow as he looked at Yi Qinghan seriously. Ugh, Supreme Yi's old face reddened. He didn't expect Little Golden Crow to still remember how he tricked him back then. "Boss, I only have 1 wish, and that is to make Little Golden Crow's wish come true," Supreme Yi said shamelessly. "Ha ha ha, we'll talk about it after you beat me," said Yi Qinghan as he laughed. Everyone laughed crazily. Whenever Supreme Yi appeared, even if he didn't say anything, his expression would be hilarious. Brothers and sisters, raise your glasses. Raise your glasses. Hua. Some people directly raised their wine jars, some raised their luminous cups. Only Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven raised a huge cauldron filled with strong wine. Yi Qinghan glanced at Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven from the corner of his eyes. He could only laugh out loud to express his speechlessness. Everyone drank the strong wine and was drunk. Flame Emperor was drunk in the arms of a beauty, relaxed like never before. Yi Qinghan looked at everyone who was on the verge of collapse. He formed a seal with his 10 fingers and kneaded the few balls of Dominator's energy into a ball. It turned into a divine dragon and pierced through the universe, throwing it to an unknown place. Those who are fated will get it. If I don't become a Dominator, I hope that those who are fated will become a Dominator and open up a new path. Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. With a wave of his hand, he took away Emperor Yi, Jian Qinxue, the owner, Green Lotus Sword Deity, Medusa, Fan Yin, and the others, leaving behind a large group of people who were drunk. My path has not reached the end. I want to explore things beyond the Dominator realm and the original universe. However, I shouldn't be so selfish as to bring you all along. You all should enjoy yourselves. Yi Qinghan brought the beauties and flew into the sky. When he reached the sky, he saw everyone lying on the ground with wine jars in their hands. He couldn't help but reveal a carefree smile. The new book, Above Gods and Demons, has been released. Moreover, it's already plump. Many people like souvenirs, so I'll give out souvenirs. The top 3 will be rewarded with physical books. If I can't get a traditional one, I'll print it myself. Those who aren't in the top 3 will also get some souvenirs. The value of the souvenirs isn't high, but it's a token of my appreciation. As for what kind of event it is, I'll make a list later. Everyone, please pay attention to it. There are only 3 physical books, so there won't be any backdoor deals. It's all about strength and luck. Everyone, please take part. Chapter 3107. Time, Immemorial Era. Location, Yen Clan's ancestral land, Human Emperor Peak. Character, Yen Emperor. Human Emperor Peak was the highest peak of the Yen clan's land. Halfway up the mountain was the Human Emperor training ground. A stalwart figure stood with his back facing the common people. He held a water gourd in his hand and sprayed spiritual water on a 9-colored flower. He was very careful as if he was afraid of damaging the most beautiful flower in the world. It was the legendary 9-colored Brahman heart that could revive the dead. From the side, this white-clothed man looked like jade. His face looked like it was carved by a knife. There was not a single flaw on his face. From the front, he looked like he was about 26 or 27 years old. He had long black hair, shapely eyebrows and sharp eyes. His aura was reserved and refined. He had a high nose bridge and thin lips. That ethereal emperor aura was captivating. When he smiled, it was enough to move the heart of the most beautiful woman in the world. He wore an emperor's battle robe and a belt. On his waist was the famous human emperor's sword. He had fought countless geniuses, from the Taigu emperor to the mortal world. No one could withstand 1,000 swords, including the Taigu emperor. He was the #1 emperor under the heavens, the emperor of all ages. A single shout from him was enough to cause the entire Yen clan to boil over. He was high and mighty, but he treated his people like his own children. Even when he served this divine flower, he was careful. Every movement could be said to be perfect. Hua! The 9-colored Brahman heart swayed with the wind as if it had its own thoughts. It was in high spirits. Every time Yen Emperor appeared, it would dance its most beautiful body. Every time the 9-colored Brahman heart swayed like this, Yen Emperor knew that it wanted to see his sword dance. Hum! Xiao. His white robe fluttered in the wind. His figure was elegant. His sword moved through the heavens, accompanied by the Tao. A new great Tao was formed in the void. Golden light paved the way. The great Tao roared as if it was celebrating, but more than that, it was fearful. Yen Emperor's Great Tao. This was the first great Tao created by a human. Xiao. 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 Whoosh. It was a simple sword strike, yet it actually caused cracks to appear in the void. Moreover, it formed a new 9-colored Brahma heart that could be seen incomparably clearly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Ren Huang sword sometimes left his hand and sometimes spun around. He had completely achieved the state of being one with the sword. The sword followed the heart, and the sword followed the heart. The origin of the great Tao of the sword was all within a single thought. With every sword strike, the Yen Emperor's great Tao became more condensed. As the sword aura fell, the Yen Emperor's great Tao quickly disappeared and hid in the dark. Whoosh! Roar! The human sovereign sword returned to its scabbard, and the cold light was still there. Fan Xian, this is my last pure land. When can I dance with you? The Flame Emperor's voice was extremely hoarse, steady, and powerful. He stood in front of the nine-colored Brahma heart. Even if he didn't do it on purpose, his aura had already become one with the heavens and earth. A simple sentence was enough to describe the vicissitudes of life. He was too lonely. He was already invincible among those of the same level. There were only 3 people left, Yen Zhu, Primordial Yin Yang, and Chu Shiliang. However, they were high and mighty with high statuses. How could they put down their face to fight with a junior? It was lonely at the top, only the Emperor's sword could dance, the world was lonely, only Fan Xin could accompany. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 9-colored Brahma heart emitted the most beautiful 9-colored divine light. It seemed to be extremely excited. This was the best sentence it had ever heard. The Flame Emperor didn't seem to have asked it to dance with him. Whoosh! The Flame Emperor didn't know what the 9-colored Brahma heart was thinking. He raised his head and sighed. He wanted to be emperor but gave up several times. This was because the Yen Emperor's great Tao in his heart was not complete. He was a perfectionist, so he didn't take the final step. Whoosh. Whoosh. An old man appeared in the human emperor's dojo. He bowed and said, "My emperor, the ancient gods and immortals have gone too far. In the north, the dim divine general poisoned the elder of my tribe. In the south, the Taijiang divine tribe massacred my tribe." The gentle and elegant Flame Emperor's eyes flashed coldly. His black hair fluttered. He waved his hand and his sword flew through the sky. "Pass down my order. Destroy the dim divine general's bloodline and slaughter the Taijiang divine tribe. Even if we have to go to war with Class 1 Hall, we won't hesitate. Those who offend my tribe will be killed no matter how strong they are. With this, we will stop Class 1 Hall from offending my tribe." His voice was like thunder, rolling and vast, spreading into the galaxy. The archaic war officially began after these words, and it would resound through the ages. No one forgot about it. One of the 36 elders of the Yen tribe was poisoned to death. The remaining 35 super experts were all gathered, waiting for the Flame Emperor to summon them. Whoosh! The Flame Emperor stepped on the air, stepping on everything. The human emperor's sword instantly split into 5. "For supreme elders of heaven, earth, man, reincarnation, come out and receive my sword. Today, I will trample the dim divine land. If gods come, I will kill gods. If immortals come, I will kill immortals." When the 5 swords of heaven, earth, human emperor, and reincarnation merged into one, it was the true human emperor's sword. This was a supreme emperor's sword. When the 5 swords were separated, they were still able to steal people's souls. Yes. The blood of the 35 elders boiled. Although there were many experts in the Yen clan over the years, Class 1 Hall was even stronger. The Flame Ancestor had always been enduring, but the Flame Emperor was full of vigor. He did not want to endure, nor could he endure. Otherwise, the Yen clan would be continuously weakened, and who knew how many people would die in vain. Legend of the Flame Emperor 2. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thud thud thud, boom boom boom. Thousands of horses galloped forward. They were all immemorial mutated beasts tamed by the Yen tribe. The Flame Emperor led the way. This human emperor's unicorn was 1 in 10,000. It was unique in the world. Its hair was white, and even its mane was white. It stepped on mountains and rivers as it galloped through the air, causing the sky to change color. It was as if only one person, one horse, and one sword were left in the world. The Flame Emperor's army headed straight for the dim divine land. The Flame Emperor had no other choice. The Yen tribe had been slaughtered. If he still endured, all the ancient gods and ancient immortals would enslave the Yen tribe. The Flame Ancestor didn't say anything. As the Crown Prince, if he didn't say anything, the Yen tribe would be enslaved forever. His handsome face was filled with determination and persistence. He wasn't impulsive, but he was too protective and loved his people too much. He believed that those who offended the people of Great Yen would be killed no matter how far they were or how strong they were. So what if they were from Class 1 Hull? Unfortunately, he misjudged human nature and wasted his life. The army of 300,000 was imposing. Wherever the Flame Emperor's sword pointed, it would be a place of conquest. They were looking forward to this battle. The Yen tribe's elder Tian held the heavenly sword. The two Yen tribe's elders controlled the two flanks of the army. The army galloped through the clouds, passing through Giant Spirit Emperor's territory. No one dared to block the Flame Emperor's sword, allowing the army to pass through the territory. The dim divine land acted as if they were facing a great enemy. The entire army moved out, asking for help everywhere, hoping that the Taigu Emperor would come to their aid. They thought that the Yen tribe would endure the massacre of an entire Yen tribe. Unfortunately, the dim divine general was wrong. The Flame Emperor could not tolerate this. Boom! The army arrived at the dim divine land. The Flame Emperor unsheathed his sword and pierced through the walls of the dim divine city. His black hair fluttered, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. Today, I will use the dim divine land as an example to tell the world that the Yen tribe will not be enslaved. The immortals and gods will not bully the Yen tribe. The human emperor's sword was pointed at the dim divine general. The Flame Emperor's voice was like thunder. It was vast and mighty, warning the world. Then, his killing intent soared into the sky as he said in a low voice, "From today onwards, the dim divine land will be separated from the ancient immortal world forever. Kill!" The Yen tribe's elder Tian took the lead, drawing his sword, and charged toward the dim divine land. Roar! Swoosh! Swoosh! The great Tao immemorial Master God held the great Tao edge weapon and charged toward the Flame Emperor. He shouted angrily, "Flame Emperor, you dare to go against your superiors and attack the immemorial God tribe? Do you want to become enemies with Class 1 Hull?" Boom! The giant Spirit Emperor held his huge sword and slashed through the galaxy, heading straight for the Flame Emperor. Hum! The Flame Emperor's sword slashed through the galaxy. Although he did not use the Flame Emperor's Tao, his sword skills had reached the peak. He slashed the great Tao edge weapon away, and the sword broke through the ages. When the sword landed on the huge sword, the terrifying force almost split the giant Spirit Emperor's huge sword apart. Whoosh! 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 The giant Spirit Emperor's body contained boundless power, and he could mobilize the power of the ancient immortal world. However, he was forced back a few thousand steps by the Flame Emperor's sword. The ground was crushed, but the Flame Emperor did not move at all. Today, I will destroy the dim divine land and immemorial God tribe. You better not stop me. Otherwise, I will not hesitate to start a war with Class 1 Hull. The Flame Emperor looked coldly at the giant Spirit Emperor and the great Tao immemorial Master God. The two Taigu emperors could not stop his determination. Presumptuous. Even the Flame Ancestor does not dare to start a war with Class 1 Hull. Hum. Pa. The Flame Emperor's sword flew through the clouds and arrived beside the great Tao immemorial Master God in the blink of an eye. The sword knocked the great Tao edge weapon aside, and the back of the sword hit the great Tao immemorial Master God's face. The sword chi was so sharp that it almost tore the great Tao immemorial Master God's face apart. Whether he dares to start a war or not is not up to you, but I dare. Whoosh! Poochie! The sword in the Flame Emperor's hand was as fast as lightning. When it was slow, it was beautiful. However, when it was fast, it was a killing technique. The Taigu Emperor could not resist. The Taigu Emperor and the great Tao immemorial Master God worked together, but they were forced back by the Flame Emperor's sword. The Flame Emperor, who had not yet become an emperor, had not even used the Flame Emperor's great Tao, but he was able to send the two Taigu Emperors flying. Boom! Boom! Whoosh! Whoosh! The dimmed divine land was shattered. The sword cut through the shackles and tore through thousands of miles. After fighting for 12 days, the two experts had dozens of bloody holes in their bodies. The victor was decided. Hum! Boom! The great Tao immemorial Master God actually gave up on fighting against the Flame Emperor. The great Tao immemorial Master God's weapon suddenly pierced through the galaxy and pierced the back of Elder Tian. Bang! Pucci. Elder Tian and the dimmed God General were originally fighting against each other. Both of them were equal in strength. However, after being attacked by the great Tao immemorial Master God, the great Tao edge pierced through his back and through his heart. He died on the spot. Hum! Boom! The Flame Emperor was furious. His sword pierced through the great Tao immemorial Master God's chest. The sword's aura was shocking as it directly pierced through his throat. Pucci. Although the great Tao immemorial Master God's heart and soul were not heavily injured, he almost died on the spot. In the end, he could only escape under the cover of the giant Spirit Emperor. Seeing Elder Tian of the Yen clan being killed, the Flame Emperor was furious. He split the mountains and rivers with his sword, directly splitting the dim divine land and almost breaking away from the ancient immortal world. The army was extremely brutal. The Flame Emperor charged into the enemy army and pierced through their formation with his sword, causing countless casualties. Hum! The dimmed God General stepped on the dimmed dragon and charged towards the Flame Emperor. The dim divine spear pierced through the void, wanting to kill the Flame Emperor. Boom! The Flame Emperor defeated the combined attack of the dimmed God General and the dimmed dragon. Hum! Pucci. The human Emperor's sword pierced through the dimmed dragon's defense, causing it to vomit blood and fly backwards. The dimmed God General was almost flung away. The dimmed God General was one of the strongest God Generals. However, the gap between him and the Flame Emperor was too big. Xiao! Xiao! Yen Emperor said. Yen Emperor did not give the gloomy divine general any more chances. He pierced his sword through the gloomy python dragon that was flying backwards. The gloomy python dragon that was in its fourth state immediately fell to the ground and fainted on the spot, almost dying. However, the Flame Emperor did not want the dimmed dragon's life. He wanted the dimmed God General's life. Hum! Pucci. The Flame Emperor stepped on the unicorn's forehead and soared into the sky. His sword split into 3 and pierced through the brain and the heart. The sword chi pierced through the sea of consciousness and destroyed the soul. The sword body pierced through the heart. A God General died on the spot. However, at this moment, Class 1 Hall seemed to have prepared for war. When the Flame Emperor killed the dimmed God General, at least millions of soldiers surged over from all directions. There were countless experts, including the 3 Taigu Emperors. Hum! Boom! The Flame Emperor pierced through the dimmed God land and left the ancient immortal world. He passed through the world barrier and entered the immortal world. There were still many flame race and dimmed race armies on the dimmed God land. They fought crazily and disappeared from the ancient immortal world in the blink of an eye. The Flame Emperor looked at the incoming Class 1 Hall army and knew that the immemorial war had officially begun. He looked around and a trace of doubt appeared in his heart. These people seemed to be waiting for him. They came too quickly. Chapter 3108. Class 1 Hall's army arrived too quickly, as if they had been waiting for a long time. Just as Yen Emperor pierced through the gloomy divine land, the army arrived. A portion of the Yen race army was taken away by the gloomy divine land, but there were still over 200,000 people. Yan Emperor held the human emperor's sword and looked at the several Taigu emperors charging over with murderous intent in his eyes. Then, he drew his sword and shouted. Today, the Yen race and Class 1 Hall are at war. Kill all those from Class 1 Hall. Whoosh! The 200,000-strong army faced the millions of charging Class 1 Hall's army. Their momentum was great, and they moved in unison. None of them feared death. Follow me and kill. Whoosh! Yan Emperor rode his warhorse and soared into the air. Yan Emperor's warhorse, Scarlet Flame, was as strong as the Taigu Emperor. The human emperor's sword in his hand brought out its peak combat strength. Although the Yan Emperor's great Dao was incomplete, it still had the strength of a killing emperor. Boom! Boom! Whoosh! Yan Emperor crushed Class 1 Hall's million-strong army by himself. The army was no longer of any use in his eyes. His sword moved in all directions and swept out. No one could block his attack. Even the Taigu Emperor was defeated. Kill, the Yen race army's momentum soared. The general was valiant and did not fear death. Why should the soldiers be afraid? 200,000 against 1 million. It was like a meat grinder. Corpses were constantly being crushed. Corpses littered the field. Yan Emperor suppressed 3 Taigu emperors and 2 primordial gods with one sword. Instantly, the Taigu Emperor's sword pierced through the air. Everything retreated. The Taigu Emperor's sword covered the sky, and the killing intent caused the army to tremble. Whoosh! 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 Boom! Yan Emperor forced 5 primes into the air. His sword aura was like a rainbow. Yan Emperor's sword Dao had reached perfection. With his great Dao, no one was a match for him aside from half-martial ancestors. If he had been willing to proclaim himself emperor back then, the primordial yin-yang might not have been able to kill him. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his white robes were dyed in blood. Emperor's blood dyed the blue sky red. The light of the scorching sun was suppressed by the emperor's sword, and the battle between the Taigu Emperor and the primordial master gods began. The Yen ancestor did not appear, and the Yen Emperor alone blocked the Taigu Emperor and the primordial master gods. Fortunately, the 12 primordial emperors and the 6 primordial master gods did not all appear. Otherwise, today's battle would have been tragic. Boom! Bang! The Flame Emperor's body of flesh and blood kicked away the master god weapon. His sword pierced through the laws of order and sent the startling Sky Emperor's startling sky rod flying. His sword force was unparalleled. Every move and every style was impossible to resist. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Even time and space were shattered by the sword aura, and it was like a violent storm. His battle prowess had already reached the pinnacle of perfection, attracting the attention of the people who ruled over the ancient times. After fighting for several hours, the Flame Emperor's attacks caused the Taigu Emperor to bleed and heavily injure him. However, the Taigu Emperor and the Taigu Emperor's life force were too tenacious. In addition to their numbers and cooperation, the Flame Emperor was unable to achieve anything in a short period of time. Boom! Bang! The Flame Emperor couldn't take down the Taigu Emperor after attacking for a long time. Seeing the Yen tribe army being surrounded by millions of Taigu emperors, he was instantly enraged. His sword pierced through the rainbow, turning into a flying dragon and piercing through the Great Sun Immortal Emperor's defense. It directly pierced through his left arm, and the Great Sun Immortal Emperor was almost cut into 2. Poochie! Ah! The Great Sun Immortal Emperor screamed in agony as his body flew backwards. Finally, the Flame Emperor managed to create an opening in the Taigu Emperor's defense. He spun his sword around and almost pierced through the Mu Wu Immortal Emperor's heart. However, the Mu Wu Immortal Emperor had blocked 50% of the sword force, and instantly defeated 2 experts. The remaining 3 were pale. They had never thought that a person could suppress the Taigu Emperor so much through cultivation. It wasn't that they were too weak, but the Flame Emperor was too strong. When the Flame Emperor reaches the peak, even the heavens will be a man. When the human emperor's sword is drawn, the Taigu Emperor shall be destroyed. The Emperor of all ages shall be mine alone. The Flame Emperor's killing intent soared to the sky. He rode the single-horned warhorse, Crimson Flame, and charged forward at lightning speed, forcing the other 3 Taigu Emperors to retreat. Xiu that the Flame Emperor continuously slashed out more than 1,000 times, causing the remaining 3 experts to be stained with blood. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky, and heavy rain poured down, cleansing the ancient immortal world. The Taigu Emperor, the son of the heavens, was severely injured. The great Tao rumbled, and all techniques were attached to him. The heavens are heartless, allowing their children to harm others. They shall be destroyed. The Flame Emperor pointed his sword at the heavens, and his voice was like thunder. However, the heavens didn't dare to send down heavenly punishment. Heavens! All techniques! Retreat! Hua! Boom! The great Tao of heaven and earth and all techniques retreated. The Flame Emperor's aura was already heaven-defying. The 5 Taigu Emperors and the archaic Master Gods retreated, leaving behind a large number of corpses. This battle was just a probing battle to test the Flame Emperor's strength. Class 1 Hall didn't use their full strength at all. However, even so, only a few tens of thousands of the Yen tribe's 200,000-strong army remained. The ground was littered with corpses. There were at least 700 to 800,000 people. More than half of Class 1 Hall's people were injured or killed. As for the Yen tribe's 200,000-strong army, they lost 80 to 90%. The difference in numbers was too great. It was understandable that the Yen tribe suffered heavy losses. However, the Flame Emperor's gentle face was filled with killing intent. His gentle eyes turned sharp. Army, retreat to the Yen tribe's ancestral land. Order the 3 armies to move out. We will officially start the war with Class 1 Hull. I will charge into the Taijiang Divine Tribe alone. The Flame Emperor rode the Scarlet Flame-horned warhorse and charged towards the Taijiang Divine Tribe with the human Emperor's sword in hand. The Taijiang Divine Tribe was a subordinate divine tribe of the Divine Will Master God. The Taijiang Divine General was one of the most capable divine generals under the Divine Will Master God. The Flame Emperor didn't care whose subordinate the Taijiang Divine General was. The Taijiang Divine General had slaughtered a Yen tribe, so he deserved to die. Clop clop clop, the Flame Emperor charged towards the Taijiang Divine Tribe alone with his sword and horse. The Flame Emperor charged into the Divine Land alone. He wanted to start a massacre and shock all the races in the world. The Flame people couldn't be bullied. Boom boom boom. The Taijiang celestial race saw the Yen Emperor galloping towards them and knew that they had stirred up trouble. The divine runes on the Taijiang celestial race's forehead towered into the sky as his aura spread. He seemed to be only slightly stronger than the immemorial celestial race's war spear. He actually wanted to challenge Yen Emperor. Whoosh! Boom! The Taijiang Divine General swept his spear across the void and charged towards the Flame Emperor on the Scarlet Flame warhorse. Puchi! Boom! The Flame Emperor became one with his horse. His sword followed suit and paved a path. A cold light pierced through the Taijiang Divine General's forehead. Even the soul in the Divine General's divinity was killed. Boom! The Taijiang Divine General's corpse fell from the sky. Whoosh! Whoosh! Following that, another cold light pierced through the Taijiang Divine General's chest. The Taijiang Divine General's body and soul died on the spot. He couldn't resist at all. Chapter 3109. Taijiang Divine General died tragically on the spot. The Taijiang Divine Rune was pierced through. This sword caused the heavens and earth to lose their color. This sword had reached the pinnacle of perfection, without any flaws. But at this moment, the primordial divine will master God appeared in the territory of the Taijiang divine tribe. Since the Taijiang divine general was killed, how could she not appear? The primordial divine will master God was the only female emperor in the primordial era. She was beautiful and charming. Every move of hers was extremely charming. Her long hair fluttered in the wind and she was dressed in white. She looked holy and pure. One look at her and one would fall into her bright eyes. She was different from the Taigu emperors. Those Taigu emperors were like primordial beings. They were extremely ancient and ugly. But she was an exception. The primordial divine will master God took a step forward and sighed softly. Her voice turned into a heavenly sound that spread out in all directions. Yen Emperor, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Why do you have to do this? The primordial divine will master God was not like the other Taigu emperors. As a woman, she still had some kindness in her. She knew that someone wanted to deal with the Yen Emperor. The Flame Emperor glared at the primordial godly will master God coldly. Gripping his sword, he asked in a deep voice, "So, you're saying that the Taijiang god race has massacred an entire tribe of my flame tribe without sparing even a single chicken or dog? This Taijiang divine general is your right-hand man. Don't you know anything about his actions?" The primordial divine will master God shook her head slightly and said softly, "I know you don't believe me. But I really didn't know that he would do this." "Then please shut up." The Yen Emperor replied bluntly. The primordial divine will master God took a deep breath. She was here under orders. If the Yen Emperor listened to her advice and escaped far away, she might be able to save this monstrous talent. But if the Yen Emperor didn't listen to her advice, he wouldn't be able to survive today. Please make your move. I would like to see the fighting strength of the #1 emperor in the world. I want to see if you can really make those who ruled the ancient times fear you. The primordial divine will master God reached out with his jade-like hand. With a flick of his finger, everything in the surroundings came to a standstill, and everything within a radius of 1,000 miles became his domain. She was definitely the strongest among the Taigu emperors. Her divine mind was so strong that it could distort imperial weapons and directly control the Taigu emperor. She could take on several Taigu emperors by herself. When the human sovereign sword was unsheathed, the flame emperor's aura shook. The space within 3 to 5 meters shattered. Divine sense could not be controlled and was in an independent state. Whoosh! The primordial divine will master God took a light step forward and entered the domain. The surrounding space froze, but she was like a fish swimming in water. Whoosh! The divine will sovereign God stretched out his hand and retrieved a spiritual prayer bead. An utmost treasure like this could strengthen her soul by 30%. Her soul had already reached the pinnacle of perfection in the first place, and was in harmony with the heavens and the earth. Now that she was strengthened by 30%, she would definitely become even more terrifying. Even the Taigu emperor would have to submit before her. Roar! The divine will sovereign God moved his mind and a ferocious tiger appeared in front of him. It was formed by divine sense, but it possessed terrifying destructive power. The tiger's roar shattered the heavenly river and pierced the soul. However, the flame emperor was indifferent. His soul was already complete and could not be shaken by external things. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The flame emperor struck out with his sword. His sword broke through the void, and the divine will domain crumbled. It was completely unstoppable. Boom boom boom. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The flame emperor's sword continued to shatter everything as it clashed with the divine will sovereign God. Both of them were top-notch supremes. The void shattered continuously, and the formation of the order domain and its destruction happened in an instant. Whoosh.hum. The human sovereign sword whistled as the crimson flame warhorse galloped in flames. It could trample on the stagnant domain and sweep in all directions. However, although the divine will sovereign God was defeated in 2 days, he did not show any signs of losing completely. However, on the 3rd day, several figures dashed across the void and pierced through everything from afar. They went straight for the Flame Emperor's back and the Crimson Flame Warhorse. Their killing intent was surging like the ocean. Boom boom boom. Bang! The Flame Emperor's sword reverberated, shattering several attacks. However, the people who were charging at him retreated even faster. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. The divine will sovereign God was the main attacker, and the Taigu Emperor was the support. They kept attacking from different dimensions, causing quite a lot of trouble for the Flame Emperor. In the sky above the divine will sovereign God's territory, the void collapsed, and black holes appeared everywhere. The killing caused panic. Because of the Taigu Emperor's suppression, the killing continued for several months. At this moment, the ancient god general led a large group of experts to attack the Yen tribe's supreme elders and army. Almost all the immemorial god generals and immortal generals of Class 1 Hall were mobilized, killing the Yen tribe's supreme elders. In an instant, the ancient immortal world was flooded with blood. There were countless casualties and corpses everywhere. In the Yen tribe's territory, a full-scale war broke out. There were enemies everywhere, and every tribe was under attack. However, the Flame Ancestor did not appear. He did not even send a message. It was all up to the Flame Emperor and the Yen tribe's elders to hold on. One by one, the Yen tribe's tribes were slaughtered. Their corpses were scattered in the wilderness. There was not even a burial ground. The ancient god general saw countless weak humans wailing and struggling in the Yen tribe's tribes. He could not bear it anymore. He started to slow down his attacks, wasting time. He fought with a princess of the tribe for several months without a clear victor. However, while he slowed down his attacks here, the other regions did not. The Yen tribe suffered heavy casualties. Seeing that the Yen tribe was about to be destroyed, the ancient god general did not want to waste more time. If he did not kill them, the other god generals and immortal generals of Class 1 Hall would slaughter them. Therefore, he forcefully defeated the princess and abducted her. Several years later, the Flaming Emperor had been ambushed thousands, even tens of thousands of times. Even his life source had been damaged. The divine will master god was too strong. With her holding him back and the ambushes from several immemorial emperors and master gods, the Flaming Emperor had managed to hold on for several years without ascending to the throne. This was unprecedented. Blood dyed the battlefield red. The Flame Emperor severely injured 3 Taigu emperors. War horses neighed and the army wailed. A group of death warriors rushed to the battlefield and used their lives to tell the Flame Emperor that more than half of the 36 Taigu emperors were dead or injured. More than half of the army and the Yen tribe's tribes were also dead or injured. This time, the Flame Emperor was completely enraged. The Flame Emperor directly gave up the defense on his back and used his sword to pierce through thousands of miles, severely injuring the divine will sovereign god. This sword almost pierced through her heart. However, the Taigu Emperor's life force was extremely strong. Even though he was severely injured, the divine will sovereign god did not give up attacking. The price of this sword strike was a heavy blow to his life source. He lost at least 30% of his life force. The battlefield was merciless. The Flame Emperor's killing intent was revealed. He attacked ruthlessly and risked his life several times to lure the other Taigu emperors to appear. He broke their attacks one by one and continuously injured several Taigu emperors. This battle went on for several years. The ancient god general finally returned to the battlefield and faced the Flame Emperor. His eyes were filled with the will to die. He charged at the Flame Emperor in a killing stance. Roar! Whoosh! Poochie! The Flame Emperor was so angry that he pierced the ancient god general's heart with his sword. The Flame Emperor did not expect the ancient god general to come to his death. He grabbed the ancient god general's neck with his left hand, but the ancient god general held on to his sleeve tightly. The ancient god general said with a hoarse voice, "I have a son. His mother is the princess of the Yen tribe. If your highness sees him, please show mercy." The Flame Emperor's white robe was dyed red by the god's blood. With a gentle push, the ancient god general's corpse fell to the ground. Kill! Whoosh! A sword ray swept across the void, piercing through the Order realm and the divine will sovereign god's divine will defense. It directly pierced through her chest. The strongest empress of the generation died on the spot. This sword seemed powerful, but it was not enough to kill the divine will sovereign god. The Flame Emperor could see that she did not want to attack anymore and automatically gave up on her life. Once the divine will sovereign god died, the Taigu emperors who were hiding in the dark did not appear from the beginning to the end. They then quietly left. In this battle, many Taigu emperors participated. However, the historical records were completely different. This was because the immemorial Yin Yang did not want the world to know the Flame Emperor's true strength. He did not want the world to think that he was killing a genius. He also did not want others to know that he was afraid of the Flame Emperor, which was why he took his life. The Flame Emperor looked at the corpses on the ground and was exhausted. He looked up at the sky. He really wanted to ask the Flame Ancestor why he did not attack. Chapter 31:10. Yen Emperor looked at the corpses on the ground tiredly. There were many casualties in the army but Yen Zhu did not make a move. This disappointed him. Why? Yen Emperor said hoarsely. He wanted to ask Yen Zhu. However, he did not expect that Yen Zhu, Yen Yu, would be sitting with immemorial Yin Yang, who had left the ancient immortal world for a long time. Beside them was Chu Shiliang and Emperor Liang. The three of them had a straightforward conversation. Immemorial Yin Yang was domineering. However, he was not an ancestor after all. Hence, he was wary of Yen Emperor. For example, Yen Emperor was like the sun in the sky now. His merit was so high that it threatened Yen Zhu's position. The 36 elders of the Yen tribe seemed to trust Yen Emperor more. Merit intimidated Yen Zhu. This was a vicious phrase. Anyone who offended Yen Zhu would not have a good ending, just like Yen Emperor. The first topic they discussed was whether Yen Emperor should be killed or not. Kill. Immemorial Yin Yang gave a firm answer. Yen Yu did not refute. In fact, it was exactly what he wanted. However, he could not let Yen Emperor off so easily. Even if Yen Emperor died, he should give Yen Emperor some benefits. He is my son after all. I can't bear to kill him just like that. Yen Yu sighed as if he had made a huge concession. Immemorial Yin Yang did not doubt Yen Zhu. After all, Yen Zhu was his son. No one would be willing to give up just like that, let alone such an outstanding son. Brother Yen Yu, Yen Emperor is indeed outstanding. If he was my son, I would not give up so easily. However, I have to remind you that Yen Emperor's merit is so high that he could replace your position anytime. Do you want him to be the one in charge of the Yen tribe and not you? Immemorial Yin Yang was a normal person in the immemorial era. He was strong in Yang and weak in Yin. One Yin and one Yang. Yang had already taken form but Yin had not. Hence, he could not reach the ancestor realm. Sigh, Yen Yu sighed and said helplessly, Brother Yin Yang, no matter what, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. Immemorial Yin Yang was afraid that Yen Yu would not agree. After all, Yen Zhu was close to the ancestor realm. If they fought to the death, he might not win. Furthermore, there was Yen Emperor. When both sides were injured, Yen Emperor would take the throne and Class 1 Hall would lose. Brother Yen Yu, just say it. I will agree to it. Immemorial Yin Yang said. Yan Yu pondered for a long time and said in a deep voice, "This problem involves the second scheme, which is the people of the 10 tribulations 10 lives. I want the variant star root's fundamental source, which can allow me to break into the ancestor realm." "What do you want? Just tell me directly." Primordial Yin Yang directly asked. "I want that person's soul," Yan Yu said in a deep voice. After saying that, the two of them looked at Chu Shiliang. Chu Shiliang was merely a subordinate of the primordial Yin Yang. The reason he was allowed to participate in this plot was because his prediction skills were indeed at the peak of perfection. He could clearly predict where the people of the 10 tribulations and 10 reincarnations would come from and where they would go. In order to set up the second plot, Chu Shiliang had to participate. "It's not impossible to get his soul." Chu Shiliang pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "But the tribulation taker is too scheming. If you want to approach him quietly, you'll have to set up a small trap and make him approach you of his own accord." The three of them discussed for a long time. In the end, Yan Yu decided on a plan, but he did not tell Chu Shiliang and Primordial Yin Yang. As the flame ancestor, how could he trust his enemies so easily? This was the reason why Emperor Liang was not sure where Yan Yu's soul was hidden. The tribulation taker's roots come from Qiu Tian region. We must not let him get close to Qiu Tian region. Primordial Yin Yang took a deep breath and reminded in a deep voice, "No matter how we set it up, we must block Qiu Tian region. This is a forbidden area, no one is allowed to touch it." At this moment, Chu Shiliang lowered his head. His eyes flashed, but he did not say anything. The three of them worked together to lay out two rough plans that were interlinked. However, they had their own plans for the specific details and did not trust each other. As for Chu Shiliang, he laid out a third plan within the two plans and added fuel to the fire. He couldn't protect the Flame Emperor, but he hoped to protect Yi Qinghan. Because, at this moment, Yan Emperor was not in a hurry to return. Instead, he rushed towards the ancient god general's residence. He did not want to kill the ancient god general anymore. Not everyone in the elite hall was bad. Yan Emperor knew that the ancient god general's son was his nephew and could be trusted. From the bottom of his heart, Yan Emperor began to leave a way out for himself. At least, he had set up a backup plan. Even if he died in battle, his Yan Emperor's great Tao would not be lost. Whoosh! Whoosh! After spending a few years, Yan Emperor found the young ancient god emperor and secretly brought him out. When he learned that his sister had committed suicide, he was even more furious. "Child, I am your uncle. You must remember that your parents were killed by the elite hall. Don't help them." Yan Emperor hugged the ancient god emperor and said in a deep voice. The young ancient god emperor was talented. After all, he was the descendant of the Yan clan and the ancient god general. He had a strong will and was very sensible. At this moment, he nodded firmly and said in a clear voice, "Uncle, before my mother left, she told me not to be enemies with the Yan clan and not to work for the elite hall." Yan Emperor smiled bitterly and hugged the ancient god emperor. He said in a low voice, "From today onwards, you will be called the ancient god emperor. I hope that you will be an upright man in the future. Like your uncle, you can peacefully cultivate the Yan Emperor's great Tao that I gave you. However, before you reach perfection, you must not use it. If I die in battle one day, don't trust anyone, including your grandfather. Do you understand?" The ancient god emperor nodded firmly. His mother had also told him that Yan Emperor was an indomitable man and the hope of the Yan clan. Although he was young, he worshipped this uncle that he had just met. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Learn to be patient and don't be like your uncle. If I die in battle, I only hope that you will only do one thing in your life, and that is to kill the immemorial Yin Yang. Yan Emperor said in a deep voice. "Uncle, I understand. The ancient god emperor's big round eyes revealed a trace of wisdom as he said firmly. Whoosh! Yan Emperor imparted the Yan Emperor's great Tao to the ancient god emperor's sea of consciousness and then sent him back. He looked at the ancient god emperor in the void for a long time before he turned and left. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.